Today we're going to start with a 2018 Ford F-150 pickup, and we're going to take the cab and all the running gear and put it into this Factory 5 Racing pre-runner chassis. It's going to be pretty cool. Now, if you know anything about me by now, you know that I am a huge fan of building a vehicle, not buying a vehicle. But you're probably wondering, if that's the case, why am I driving around in this brand new Ford F-150? Maybe you think, oh, he's gonna do like a lift kit wheels and tires and show us how to, redo your truck in the weekend. That's not what we're gonna do. Let's just paint a picture for you. Let's pretend you've got a 2015 and up Ford F-150, kind of like this one right here. Any model, doesn't matter, as long as it's crew cab four-wheel drive. Let's pretend that you have that vehicle, but what you really want is a Ford Raptor. Well, what are you gonna do? Well, really, you only have one choice, and that one choice is to go ahead and, take your truck, trade it in, and buy a brand new Ford Raptor. But there's actually another option. Another option would be to create what's called a luxury pre-runner. Now, luxury pre-runners are incredibly expensive. They're essentially a trophy truck with all the bells and whistles inside that you'd find in a truck like this. Air conditioning, heat, heated steering wheel, heated seats, all that kind of stuff. But what we're gonna do today is we're gonna take this Ford F-150, and with some help from Factory 5 Racing, we are going to create our own version of a luxury pre-runner. We're gonna build a vehicle that can outperform a Raptor Pro R, can do everything essentially that a luxury pre-runner can do, maybe just a little bit under its abilities, but at the same time, we're gonna do all that for about a tenth of the cost. A luxury pre-runner is gonna start at $250,000, sometimes goes up to $500,000. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this F-150, we're not gonna include the price of the truck because we're gonna pretend you already have it, and for right around $30,000, $35,000, we're gonna build a vehicle that can handle some of the toughest off-road desert terrain you could imagine, and yet still run, drive, and handle like a brand new truck. So now that we have the truck in the shop, I actually have it positioned rather strategically, and that is because, as I said when we were driving it, the whole plan here is to show you guys that you can turn this F-150 into a vehicle that can eat a Raptor Pro R's lunch every day in the desert, and you can do it in your garage at home. So I'm not putting it on the lift. All my friends from Factory 5 Racing are gonna show up here in the shop. We're gonna tear this truck down the same way that you would tear it down in your garage at home, by me sitting on a stool watching them do all the work. It just needed some man hands. Okay, that bolt's out. Nice. Gotta love aluminum. We started taking the truck apart. I'm gonna stand here and talk to Nate about this whole package. So Nate, he's from Factory 5 Racing, in case you couldn't see the logo on his shirt. So Nate, let's talk a little bit, what are we saving off this truck?
So basically, you take the cab and all the running gear off the truck. We take that and we put it on our chassis. There's a few things we have to modify, a few things that we add, but obviously we give our own suspension A-arms and uppers and lowers. But we take the brakes, the spindles, the full drivetrain, and the cab. So if you want a really nice truck, you get a Lariat or a Limited. If you want to just get in and just have a fun truck, cheap, just get yourself an XL or an XLT work truck.
Yeah, because I was looking online last night. You can get one of these trucks for like 15 grand.
Oh yeah, the sky's the limit too. You can have this one. This one we went with a really nice interior. This is more of a show truck, and it's going to be given away to a charity. So we went with a nicer truck, but we have one back there. We have a 2015 back in Massachusetts. It's just cloth interior.
Super cheap.
Super cheap, super fun.
So we're going to keep the cab. We're not going to strip the cab. We leave everything inside.
Leave the cab just the way it is. Pick it up and pop it onto our chassis.
And you have a super secret way to do this without a lift, right?
I do. A lot of people said, how are we going to do this in our own backyard or garage? Well, we're going to show you here. We would love to use the lift. Hell of a lot easier, but this time we'll do it the way we know how to do it without the lift. So we'll show everybody how it's done.
Problem solved. All right, well, as soon as I get the front end done, we can roll the frame out, right?
Correct. Almost
easy.
there.
It's so easy. All right, let's go back to work. Well, that didn't sound good at all. All right, Jim, so we've been watching the back of the truck, and now we're at the front of the truck. So obviously there's a lot of stuff taken off of here. What are we after on the front of the truck?
Right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna roll the whole chassis out from under the cab, but we're gonna leave the drivetrain in it. So we had to get anything off the front that would have been in the way. That whole radiator support we just took off with the radiator. Basically all the fenders, the inner fenders, the whole front grille. So now this thing has the room to just roll on out from underneath.
So like if someone's doing this garage, that's why you put it in backwards. You just open the garage door, roll it outside until you need it.
Exactly. We'll leave the front wheels on. We put casters in the back and just roll it out from under. And then you don't have to use a lift or anything, you know, that you wouldn't have.
You know, we do this all the time with Jeeps, is the nice thing about a modern truck is it's designed to come apart. You're not cutting things, you just have to unhook stuff.
Right, that's how the factory makes it so they can work on it.
Yeah, so this cab, like as a matter of fact, if someone's gonna work on that motor, they may have to take this cab off.
Right.
Yeah, so the nice thing is all you gotta do is find everything to unhook everything, separate, leave the motor with the chassis, and then just everything that stays with the body, but you reuse all this stuff, right? You're gonna reuse the ABS pump and everything in the front of this truck.
Almost everything, all the electronics, even that whole radiator support will still bolt back on once this is on top of the new chassis.
All right, so I guess we're ready here, right?
We're ready to go.
We just gotta wait for them to get the back end.
Once they get the rear end out, we can roll it out.
Slackers! Come on, I'll show you where my stool is.
Clear this engine hoist.
My turn?
Yeah, okay here.
Bring her all the way out. Let's bring her all the way out now. Here we go. So this is what makes the truck really cool, right?
Right, this is what separates it from all the other trucks on the road.
So this is not like we obviously took the old frame out from underneath the cab and we're replacing it with all of this. Let's talk through this. What are we sitting in?
So basically this chassis, you roll the old one out, we're gonna slide this one under the cab, set it down on here. And what this is doing is it's designed to take all the long travel suspension. So instead of like doing it one end at a time, back halving the truck, that kind of thing, you just replace the chassis, then the 4-link bolts back in the rear, all those long control arms and everything bolts up in the front, the long travel shocks bolts up. So basically it's making the entire truck a bolt together.
And this is not, like there's no fab in this, right? Like stock body mounts go in the stock, these holes and everything. So no one's gonna have to like weld anything. This is just bolt together. Right?
Exactly. This is designed to bolt all of either the factory stuff in place or the suspension parts that we provide.
And front diffs going back in.
Front diff.
Engine, transmission, cab,
Right. Yep.
everything. And then we're reusing the rear end.
Yep, drive shafts we reuse. We give longer CVs in the front because of the extra width and some steering rack extenders. But pretty much all the rest of the stuff is just OEM driveline.
Now, some people would question why it's made out of this square material, but it's the reality is, most factory frames are not round, they're square. But this is all trussed and bridged and super strong, right?
Right, you know, because it's a truck and you have this long area that's flat, that's where you need all the strength and that bending strength under the chassis, and that's where these big rectangle tubes are strong.
Because people might not know this, but Raptors actually bend in half on the regular basis.
Right, that's why we have all this extra truss and all this extra bracing down here.
Yeah, so this is like almost like two frames. I have an upper frame and then the lower frame, and it's all trussed in, and then even the back. And we're not reusing the bed, right? It's all new.
Correct. Well, basically that whole substructure will get skinned, and then that's the bed, and then the fenders just hang on that.
What we'll do next is we'll slide this over, drop the cab on it, and it'll be a truck again.
Push the side in a little, Mark. So they come towards you more, right?
We're back in the shop working on our Factory 5 Racing XTF. I said that right, Colby?
Yes, XTF.
Colby's here with the part of the build team. Right now, where are we at? We got the body on the new chassis. What's next?
Next, we're going to be putting in the front drivetrain, differential, rack, getting ready to put the motor in. But first, we have to prep the motor for
Supercharger.
the supercharger.
Spinny air compressor power adder
yes.
thingy.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna move this chassis over onto the lift, but you don't need to have a lift to do this. You could just jack this up and put on jack stands.
Do it on jack stands.
Yeah, but since the spot in the shop we need to put it is where the lift is, so it's gonna go over on the lift, then we'll put it up in the air, and then we're basically gonna start with the front suspension, so we'll move the front suspension over onto this. How much wheel travel do we get in this bad boy?
About 16 in the front.
16 inches of wheel travel up front. That makes it a legit pre-runner in my business. I'm calling it right now, pre-runner. All right, so let's move this over there, and move the thing that's out there back in here, and we'll do stuff. All right, so now we're talking with my good friend Owen from Factor 5 Racing. We're talking about suspension. So this is, obviously it's a pre-runner truck, so we increase the width of the vehicle to get more wheel travel. How much wider are we?
So we're at 10 inches over stock, which is significantly wider. We have wider or longer CV axles to account for that. And then, you know, all the bodywork to go with it.
And then obviously new upper, new lower control arm.
Yep.
But the shocks, like every true off-road truck, this is where the magic happens.
That's right.
And this is just not an off-the-shelf Fox. This is built for you by Fox, correct?
Right. So we had a team that went out to Fox, the proving grounds, and they tested and tuned with them. So we have picked out and tuned with them a correct spring rate for this. We got the remote reservoir set up, and we're at about 16 inches of travel in the front.
And so they've got the valving spec for this truck. Now we're putting this truck together just the single shock coilover, but obviously you've got all the tabs. If you wanted to add bypasses, you can do that later on.
Yep, they're there. We have tabs for sway bars if you want that as well, and then it all just bolts in.
There we go. Bolt in, long travel suspension. Easy peasy.
That's right.
I'll make him do it. You do that, Owen. I'll be over here.
Deal.
Sit on my stool. So motor, basically the entire drivetrain's out of this thing now, right, Jesper?
Yep.
So motor's out now. You're sitting in your garage, two-car garage. You're at this point. What do you take off this original frame?
So now we're going to take all the hard brake lines, the front diff, the steering rack, and the fuel system, the fuel tank, you know.
And
so.
all of that is just going to go over to the new frame.
Yep, bolt right on.
So we don't have to build custom brake lines or steering lines or anything. It's all ready to rock. Just whatever comes off this truck goes onto that truck.
Yep.
We're going to take the front diff out. Drive shafts?
Yep.
So they reuse all the drive shafts.
Yes.
This is great. So once we get that stripped off, and this frame's basically, well, for us it's garbage,
Scrap
but
metal, yeah.
somebody could sell it for something
Sure,
and get a little
sure.
recoup money. All right, so diff out, steering rack out, but none of this all is none of
Nope,
this.
we don't use that at all. It's junk.
All right, so that stays. These two parts come out, fuel tank out, hard lines.
Good
This
to
is
go.
Awesome. Awesome. Electric power steering. So now we're on to the point of the rear suspension, but we're reusing the rear axle out of the donor truck.
Yes.
And there's a couple different versions of this axle, right?
Yep. 8.8. This is a Super 8.8, and they also have a 9.75.
And you have a bracket kit for both of those.
Both of those.
But we're not leaving this truck leaf sprung.
No.
So what are we doing to the back of this?
It's going to be a triangulated 4-link.
So triangulated 4-link with trailing arms, right?
Trailing
I
arms.
like that. I'm a big fan of trailing arms. All right, so triangulated, but we don't have to weld anything onto this axle
No.
because you have a whole brackety kit thing, right?
Brackety kit. It all bolts together.
So how is this going to bolt together?
The axle brace bolts through the diff cover, bolts onto the spring pads, and then we have another bracket that clamps to the bottom of the axle, and actually our rear lower control arms bolt through the bracket that clamps onto the bottom of the
So
axle.
it's basically all hooked up together when it's all said
Yes.
and done, and no welding required. But we do have to cut off these.
You do have to cut off the
shock
shock mounts.
Okay, so, and then once we get to that point, we can just sling it underneath the truck.
Yes.
All right, so I'll cut those mounts off.
Okay.
You get that stuff ready, and then we'll do all those things.
All right. Sounds good.
I love cutting stuff. Welcome back to the shop where we are currently building a Factory 5 Racing XTF, right?
Correct. Yep.
Extreme Truck Ford, right? I knew it. I got it
There
right.
you go.
All right, so the whole Factory 5 team is here with me, and Owen is right now. We're going to talk about the benefits of this truck, because one of the things is it's still at its heart, a lot of parts are just F-150 parts.
Right. Yep.
So we got the shocks underneath there, but there's still just a bunch of stock stuff, right?
Right. Like the whole powertrain is stock. You know, brakes you can use as stock, or we can upgrade them like we're doing here.
That's right. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to upgrade brakes all the way around. We have Power Stop Z36 truck and tow package. So the beauty of the Z36 is we have the heavy duty rotors that are drilled and slotted to help with the off-gassing of the pads as well as cleaning the pads. The pads are specifically designed for heavy duty applications like a full-size truck. If you're actually towing, or in the case of this, it's a high-performance vehicle.
Right.
So we want that extra ability to stop. And the compound of the pads is designed to bed in better on the rotors. And it's just one of the nice things, right? So we basically have stock brakes on that truck, but we're gonna be able to upgrade them with just bolt-on pieces to make this truck even better. Owen has the old pads and rotors off the truck and can now start swapping in the new rubber boots that Power Stop also includes in the kit for your sliders. Then he'll install the new pads in the bracket and slide on the new rotor, and the brake upgrade is done. We can then turn our attention to the rear of the truck, and this includes a brand new bracket and axle brace that bolts on through the diff cover to give us spots to hook up our new rear suspension without having to do any welding on our factory Ford axle. We're at the back of the truck now, and Jim has just finished putting in the fuel tank, and this is one thing I thought was super cool, because the fuel tank is now way back here.
That's right. We basically, instead of having the fuel tank run under the cab, we move it all the way to the back, which does two things. It gets basically the weight back here as much as we can get it, and it gets it out of the way of the 4-link.
But by doing that, now obviously everything else we've used in this truck, we had to pull from the frame. So we had stock brake lines, and that kind of stuff. But what do you do about fuel lines and the electronics?
So we give extensions for both those things. We give pre-wired wiring harnesses for the fuel pump and the level, and then we give some hose basically to just extend the fuel lines and the charcoal canister lines.
And then where does it fill up now?
It will fill up in the fender, but instead of in front of the wheel, it's right behind the wheel.
Right behind the wheel.
Yep.
Awesome. This is super cool. I like this. And you have to use a specific tank though, right?
That's right. The extended cabs will come with two different tanks. The optional, the long-range one is actually too wide. It won't fit across this way, so this is the standard tank for the F-150. It's 26 gallons.
So 26 gallons,
Yep.
but still uses the actual tank straps that we took out of
Factory
the
straps, yeah, they basically just hook up into the brackets we give, and you just pull it up in here.
And the cool thing about it is, it's still just like regular old Ford parts. Something happens on a fuel pump, you're not buying a special fuel pump.
Right, you're not messing with the emissions at all. It's all that stuff is just still right the way they left it.
Awesome. So now we're ready to put a rear end under this truck. It fits like a glove. With the trailing arms installed on the back of the truck and our shock in its mount, we're pretty much ready to get a rear axle underneath this truck and build a rolling chassis. We're back in the shop, wrapping up essentially the rolling chassis portion of our Factory 5 Racing XTF pre-runner style pickup truck. Now, the rear axle has been fully prepped by Colby. We got the brace installed for our triangulated 4-link in the back. But before we put it underneath there, we're gonna go ahead and throw one more upgrade of that, and that is a set of Crown brake lines. Now, for me, I love running Crown brake lines on all of my vehicles, mainly because of the strength. You end up with the multi-layered design of the actual brake line itself. That makes it incredibly safe, prevents it from any swelling when you put that brake pressure into the line, and then the one-piece fittings makes it incredibly strong. This removes any of those leak points that can come up in a brake system. Now, we were able to simply spec a set of F-150 lines for this rear axle, and I had them do it in this dark black smoke, because it's kind of gonna go with the theme of the truck, and it'll simply replace the factory rubber flex lines that go from the axle up to the frame. When taking off the old brake lines, I like to use a line wrench to make sure that I don't round off any of the tube nuts. These Crown Performance brake lines are also Kevlar reinforced. As I've said before, they are some of my favorite brake lines on the market, and they come in multiple colors to match any application that you want. With the brake lines done, we can install the final brackets we need for the 4-link setup in the rear, and then roll the rear axle in place and hook it all up. So we started the show off today by driving this truck around the neighborhood, and now it's sitting on this Factory 5 Racing XTF chassis. That's a lot of work in a short period of time, Nate.
It is, but we got a good crew here.
All the Factory 5 build crew montage guys did all the work. I just hung out on my stool and watched. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So this truck, obviously we're not done. Still got to put the drivetrain and everything back in it. But this truck is for something kind of special, isn't it?
It is. We actually have been working with Joey Logano for a couple of years. We've done some fun projects with him. We built this nasty drift truck with him, one of our other car models. And then we've just kept in touch, and we decided that we wanted to donate this truck to the Joey Logano Foundation. So it goes to like underprivileged kids. That's why we're going to do some fun stuff with it. You don't need a supercharger for the truck, but we decided to throw an Edelbrock on it. You know, if you're going to give something to Joey Logano, you probably got to...
He likes the horsepower.
I would say so, yeah. I think you're not going to be impressed with a stock Coyote, even though it's plenty of engine for the truck.
All right. The next step for this is obviously drivetrain in, and then we got to get put on all the cool body panels, right?
Yep. Well,
and that's part of the kit, right? That's
part of the kit. Yep. We're putting on the optional carbon fiber panels.
Yep.
But mostly everybody's going for that. No paint. Yeah. It's no paint, no body work. So.
All right. So next time you see this truck, it'll be a truck again, just like that. That's when it turns into a truck.
Boom.
But it didn't do it. The last time we had this truck in the Build for Off-Road shop, we put a brand new Factory 5 Racing chassis underneath it. Well, this time, we make it a truck again by getting a drivetrain underneath the hood and a whole bunch of carbon fiber. Welcome back to the shop, where once again we have our Factory 5 Racing XTF pickup truck in here. Now, if you don't recognize this truck and you're wondering why it's kind of half put together, that's because last time we took a 2018 Ford F-150 Lariat, basically stripped it off the factory chassis and installed it on this new full pre-runner style pickup truck chassis that comes as a complete kit from Factory 5 Racing. Literally unbolted everything from the stock chassis and just put it onto this one, and now we are 10 inches wider than the stock truck. We have 16 inches of wheel travel up front, a mile of wheel travel out back, thanks to the trailing arm. We're gonna build a vehicle that can outperform a Raptor Pro R, can do everything essentially that a luxury pre-runner can do, maybe just a little bit under its abilities, but at the same time, we're gonna do all that for about a tenth of the cost. A luxury pre-runner is gonna start at $250, sometimes goes up to $500,000. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this F-150, we're not gonna include the price of the truck because we're gonna pretend you already have it, and for right around $30,000, $35,000, we're gonna build a vehicle that can handle some of the toughest off-road desert terrain you could imagine, and yet still run, drive, and handle like a brand new truck. Today, this is gonna be a truck again. So we're gonna fill this hole right here with the drivetrain that we pulled out of our donor vehicle, but with one added surprise. This is the 5-liter Coyote V8 that came out of our donor truck, right, Mark?
Sure is.
Mark's part of the Factory 5 dream team that's been building this truck. Now, everyone else has been building the truck. You've been busy doing what to this motor?
We took the stock intake off and added the Edelbrock E4 supercharger
And we did that because, why?
because we needed to. A little bit more power.
We didn't need to, but we wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to put a supercharger on with this truck. You could run the stock powertrain in this truck as it is.
You could, but why would you?
I mean, the motor's already out. It's on the so this is literally just take the intake off, put this on, and then a little bit of tuning, and away we go.
That's it, yeah.
All right. Any other things you have to change when you put this in there? Spark plug gap or?
You do. They give you a set of spark plugs with it. You got to make sure they're gapped at 34 thousandths.
Yep.
We got to get the ECU number off, give it to Edelbrock, and then they send us a proper tune for this supercharger on this engine in this truck.
Stock injectors? Or do
Yes.
we have to so stock injectors, but
Yep.
we're just going to bump that up. And so then after that, everything else is just the same stuff that came out of the truck, and it's ready to go in.
Absolutely.
So do we know what kind of power this will make now with the supercharger?
Edelbrock tells us it'll make about 650 horsepower.
650 horsepower, all right, and then that's just basically bolts on the stock, a little bit of tuning, and then it just bolts right into the chassis. The chassis is ready to accept it, right?
Absolutely.
So no custom fab, no nothing, just bolts right in.
Nope.
What about the exhaust? That was a good question. I want to know, because I know we took some of the exhaust off the old truck.
We did. So we're using the stock exhaust manifolds, stock catalytic converters with the H-pipe, and then Factory 5 supplies the rest of the exhaust that goes around this chassis.
All right, so this goes in, and then we can bolt up the exhaust.
Let's do it.
We'll be driving this in no time. Let's go. Sounds good. You hear that?
That was a freaking fantastic idea on that ratchet strap, Jesper. Come on, Jesper. You good? Oh, wow, this thing's really heavy on this end. That end.
Hold on. You jammed against the rear end with the front end. Hold on, you're hooked on the there you go. Come my way now, yeah.
All right,
There you go.
now we can shift towards the passenger side.
So the motor's in up front, but Nate, you want something custom back here, right, for your spare tire?
Yeah, I know you've been having fun sitting on your stool watching everyone else work,
Been
but I
quite
figured,
boring, actually.
yeah,
but
I
okay.
figured, hey, we're down here. Let's see
Yep.
your fabrication skills, see if you could make us a spare tire carrier.
Okay, so you want the spare tire, like, there's no tailgate on this truck,
No
right?
tailgate.
All right,
You
so-
can have a tailgate. It's an option, but this being more of the off-road style build we're building here, we don't put the tailgate on.
All right, and you just want a tire way back here.
Way back there, yep.
All right. Easy peasy.
That's what I like to hear.
All right, I will use my plasma table. Last one, by the way. Last one, last one, last one. That's it. Last cut, last cut, last cut.
Once I have the flat pieces cut out of the plasma table, we're going to bring them over to the manual benchtop bender and add a 90-degree bend to create the tire carrier bracket. Then head over to the tube bender to bend up a hoop for the spare tire to ride on.
So the tire carrier, there's a couple options we could do. Basically, I've whipped up this little hoop here, and I made these little brackets that will index off of the chassis. And you could either hang the tire way off the back of the truck, which now that I look at it, that's a little too far. So I'll probably shorten this hoop up a little bit and probably have, this will be basically the back of the tire be sitting right here. And it'll sit, there'll be a plate for it to bolt down to, and then we'll use this one as an additional brace. And I'll probably have to add one more brace underneath there. So what I'll do right now is I will trim this to fit, figure out the angle that this thing will sit at, and then we can tack it onto these brackets, and then just keep adding tube until it's strong. All right, so I've got most of the pieces cut for the spare tire carrier. It's gonna index off the back of the chassis like so, but I need to lower the truck down to weld it in. But before I can do that, Owen wants to put on the exhaust. Let's talk about this exhaust. Here, it's very shiny.
It is.
So this is specific for this truck, correct?
Yep. We've designed the system. It fits on both the 3.5 EcoBoost and the 5.0 Coyote. It's stainless steel, and it's a catback system, so it's all the factory emissions untouched.
And that's one thing we haven't talked about so far. This chassis, you don't have to just use the Coyote. You can use the EcoBoost motor.
That's right. Yeah, our first prototype used the 5.0, and our second prototype used the 3.5 EcoBoost.
There we go. So if you got an EcoBoost truck or a 5.0 truck, either one will fit. Once Owen gets this exhaust bolted up, then I can finish the tire carrier. So I'll let you slide underneath that truck.
All right, we'll get to it.
Slide underneath the truck.
It looks like I'm putting Owen back to work on the exhaust, and once he gets that mocked up into place, Jim and I will show you how easy it is to install the old radiator support from the donor truck on to the Ford Factory 5 XTF.
In the shop today, we are working on our Factory 5 Racing XTF. Now that's basically, we're taking basically a bone stock Ford F-150 and turning it into the ultimate off-road pre-runner that you can bolt together yourself. And to prove that, we're at the front of the truck. And this is literally parts from the old truck, right, Jim?
That's right. This is the factory radiator support. Actually, it was real convenient because we were able to put the intercooler on it with it off the truck, so much easier. But this is all the factory piece. We just have our brackets here that bolt on. These are the ones that make the whole front end wider, and these bolt on to the front grille. But other than that, this whole thing's stock, and it'll just go right back on the frame.
So it really helped us out because, we got this intercooler to go with our supercharger. The supercharger's not for an XTF, it's for just an F-150.
Right.
So we don't have to make a bunch of custom mounts. We'll just be able to use the mounts that came with the intercooler.
All the factory mounts that came with the intercooler and the supercharger just bolted right on this, and this is just going to go right on, basically like it was a factory truck.
No cutting, no welding, all bolting. That's what I'm all about. All right, we'll put this on. Let's go. Oh, radiator hose.
There it goes. Like
Gave it a
butter.
little hit. Yeah.
Boom! Chakalaka!
With the front starting to take shape, the Factory 5 team starts to dive into the rear of the truck, installing the aluminum body panels that make up the truck bed on this chassis. I'm still working on mocking up the tire carrier at the same time that they want me to customize for them. First, I'm going to tack the carrier into place on the truck, and then I can move the entire carrier to the tabletop where I can fully weld it. This makes sure that I can get to every single part of the tire carrier when it's off the truck. I'm using my new ESAB Rogue EM190 Pro MIG welder. This is a great standalone MIG welder to have in your shop. Remember, when you're welding material like this, where you have flat stock and tube steel, make sure that you pay attention to the edge of the material. The edge is going to take heat a lot faster, so make sure to keep the molten bead on the flat plate and then just whip it up to the edge of the tube. Final test fit, and this carrier is just about done.
Now this is just basically the middle of the road for our spare tire carrier because I'm obviously gonna have to add a brace on the bottom of this to go down to pick up this bottom part of the chassis to prevent any of the bounces on this. And then we're actually gonna add a 3-way tire strap. It's gonna come off this back, come around and pick up on the front. But I can't do any of that until the aluminum is in the bed, and more importantly, all the rest of the body panels are on the truck. So that is what is next. A whole bunch of really cool carbon fiber. Ooh, carbon. All right, so the body panels that are on this truck, there's a couple of options, right, Nate?
There is.
So what are my two options?
So when you buy the standard kit, it comes with black gel-coated fiberglass panels that you fit and then paint or wrap the color of the truck or whatever you want to do.
And they look like this, right?
They look like the same exact shape. They come out of the same molds. This is the carbon fiber option. A lot of people have been doing this lately. It makes sense. It's a $7,000 option, but you don't have to paint it. So
And it
it's
looks
ready to
super
go.
cool.
And it looks super cool and it's super light.
And the reason that we went with carbon fiber for this truck is because this truck's pretty special. It's going somewhere special, right?
It is. Yeah, this truck, when we're done with this, is going to get donated to the Joey Logano Foundation.
You guys work with Joey a lot, right?
We do. We worked with him on some projects over the years and just became good friends with him. And so, yeah, we want to help out his charity. So we're going to donate this to him to the charity and figure we give him carbon body, get the supercharger on it. I don't think, you're not going to really impress him with a stock truck.
So we got carbon fiber bed sides. They're just basically going to bolt onto the structure. And then the front is fenders and a hood and everything, right?
Yep, everything.
And
Full carbon.
The hood is it a full fiberglass front end or is it just a hood and fenders?
The whole front end, grill, surround, everything's all carbon fiber.
Ooh, that's going to look sweet. All right, let's put this on.
Cool.
And installed.
The bed sides are mocked up into place and then they are mounted onto the chassis just like the interior sheet metal panels, but they use an aluminum stiffening rib across the top to basically sandwich the carbon fiber between the aluminum rib and the steel chassis.
So the back of the truck's pretty much together, right, Jim?
Right.
Now, the rear bumper, this truck has parking sensors in it, and that's all still back there, right?
Correct. So we have all the hardware and everything to put the factory parking sensors back in that bumper.
So where are we at?
So now we have all of our wiring and our plumbing is all hooked back up in the engine bay. We have all the coolant hoses run, all the new stuff for the superchargers hooked up.
Okay.
And we start working on the nose.
So all the wiring in here, you're just basically hooking it all back up. There's nothing new, right? It's hooked back up to where it was before.
That's right. I mean, the only thing that's new is the supercharger stuff because we added it just now. But
Yep.
everything else just plugs in. And if you weren't doing the supercharger swap, it would just literally plug back in
Plug
where
it back
it
in.
originated.
Now, on the front of the truck, this is also carbon, right? Just like everything else?
Right. So this piece is actually carbon no matter what. So even if you don't get carbon for the rest of the truck, this piece will always be carbon.
Okay.
The complexity of it makes it so it's just easier to make for us.
Yeah.
So we give it carbon all the time. We also give different headlights because these headlights are required to clear those 37-inch tires.
Because at full stuff, the headlight was ripping the back of the bulbs off,
Right.
right?
The stock ones are about that much deeper, and it would just tear the back of them off.
So this gets bolted on, and all the brackets are here, and then you end up with this like cool grill. But this grill isn't bolted in yet.
It's not. We have to leave this loose because we have to have access to the hood latch for, like the last minute adjustments.
All right, so then this just bolts on,
Bolts on,
and
then
then
we can.
hood and fenders, and
That's it.
Then it's a
There
truck
aren't really,
again.
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing.
perfect. All right, well, let's get this on the truck. Then it's a truck, right?
Then it's a truck.
Then it's a truck. Oh, yeah.
More work to come on the front end. After the break, we'll install a new front bumper, and the guys will bolt on the carbon fiber hood.
We're back in the shop working on our Factory 5 Racing XTF. All right, so this is the finished hood, and this is the same hood whether it's carbon or fiberglass, right?
Yes,
Same
exact
style.
hood. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
But looks really good in carbon. And obviously, we have to still adjust it.
Yeah, there's plenty of adjustment in the nose. That way you can set it how you want it. Nice gaps,
Yeah,
things like
just
that.
takes time to get that all fine-tuned in there.
Yeah.
But it looks great. I love the carbon and the black. And you said there's a couple different bumper options?
Yeah, this is our off-road tubular bumper, and then we also have a fiberglass bumper, more of a street bumper.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. And then so once that's on, it's a truck again, right?
definitely.
But in the back, all the panels are in.
Yeah.
And I noticed you guys put a lot of rivets in those
Yeah,
panels.
we want to make sure that thing's tight. There's no squeaks and rattles or anything like that. Helps stiffen the whole frame
It
up.
basically becomes like a shear panel, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So by locking that all in with the rivets, it
Yeah,
basically...
silicone rivets, good to go.
All right, so the back's done, front's almost done. We'll be driving in no time. All right, so the spare tire carrier is now officially finished. So the way it works, the keys off the 2x2 structure that's part of this bed. I have a section here for a strap, section here for a strap. We'll actually give it belts and suspenders, so we'll also bolt it down with some studs and some lug nuts. The cool thing is I had to be able to access all of these bolts to tighten it down. So I kind of killed two birds with one stone. I went ahead and cut a little access panel right here to get to all the bolts. Now you can also service the fuel pump without having to drop the tank. That's just thinking right there. So then we'll just put some button head fasteners on this, bolt it down there, drop the spare tire down. It's raw steel. Factory 5 is going to take this back to their shop, and they'll get it powder coated to match the bumper, as well as this cool little tube piece right here. So when this truck heads off to Joey Logano, it'll look cool, and most importantly, the spare back here isn't going to go anywhere. Look how strong that is. I can move the whole back of the truck. But anyway, now, once the spare's on here, then it's time to fire this thing off, take it for a drive. Zoom, zoom, baby. Riding in the back of the truck with the tire.
That spare tire is strapped down and not going anywhere. Next up, the guys put the finishing touches on this XTF truck, and we start the supercharger motor for the first time.
The truck is 100% back together now. It looks like a truck. This is pretty crazy. We were driving this just a couple days ago.
We were. This is what it was all about. That's why we brought the guys down. I want to just bang this thing out and show people how easy it is to build it.
All we gotta do now is turn the key or push the button.
Push the button.
Push the button.
That's right.
Vroom! There it is. Yeah! Woohoo! All right, let's go for a rip.
Let's do it.
Rip time.
After running the engine for a little bit, we knew that there was going to be some extra tuning that was going to have to be done for our supercharger to be running perfectly underneath the hood of this truck. So the Factory 5 Dream Team concentrated on a few other areas of the truck that needed to get done, like getting the alignment done in the front. They also wanted to test a couple other systems on the truck, like the lights, which do some pretty cool things. They got to bleed the brakes and just give it an overall nut and bolt. Now the guys take the truck back to their shop to put a final wrap on it and hand the keys over to Joey, and we can see how this XTF really handles with a pro behind the wheel.
What's happening?
How you been?
Good, you?
Great.
Thing looks sick.
It's a full tube chassis, and you set the cab on it from an F-150, from a 2015 to 2020 F-150, and then it comes with all the suspension, the long travel, the 4-link in the rear. It's actually 10 inches wider than the stock truck, and we do that to get all that travel up front, so we can get 16 inches of travel in the front and 20 in the back. So it's really designed for off-road, for whoops, and for, you know, running through the desert at high speed.
Hey, what's up? It's NASCAR champ Joey Logano, and look behind me. It is the new XTF by Factory 5. This truck is absolutely awesome. They've donated it to the Joey Logano Foundation, which is huge for foster kids in the community, help giving these kids a chance in life, help them become a contributing member of society. Well, it's gonna be at the SEMA show this year, so we're gonna have some fun driving it. We're gonna have some fun showing it around, and we're gonna raise a lot of money for the foster kids around our country. Really neat impact that we're gonna make with this truck. Make sure you check it out at factory5.com if you wanna learn more about the trucks, and joeyloganofoundation.com if you wanna learn about the impact that we're making in the foster care community. Let's do something fun.
The shocks are also like, they have clickers on them, you know, so you can adjust them. So we turn them up a little stiffer for the street too.
I ain't driving as like a normal truck right now. Like, it's nice.
Right, it's not, you
like
don't
can
realize
drive
you're
down the
driving a
road.
tube chassis underneath it.
You're right. Yeah, it's good. That is nice about it. Like, I mean, you have big tires on the other stuff, and
on
it,
it,
like,
front.
look at it. It drives like, it doesn't pull. It doesn't, like, it just drives like nice. Pretty awesome, guys. Very cool.
Glad you like it.
Yeah,
Enjoy
we're gonna
it.
have a lot of fun with this thing.
Yeah, the more you
Thank
drive
you.
it, the better.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. But we're gonna have fun carpooling. The kids drop the kids off at school with
You
this
take
one.
a shortcut sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No more traffic.
Today on Build for Off-Road, we're tackling Project Rock Raider, a one-of-a-kind FJ45 pickup truck that's inspired by a long-travel Toyota and an Ultra 4 race car. And we're kicking things off with a project today, and this one's kind of been rolling around in my head for a while. I have always had a love affair with standard cab, short bed pickup trucks. I don't know why, I just always loved them. And one vehicle that I didn't know that I like as much as I do is this one right here. This is my 2005 Toyota Tacoma that I've built as an adventure truck. So this is not a rock crawler. This is basically a truck just to bomb back roads, have fun, and just do some light overlanding / wheeling. Now, the cool thing about this truck is it's worked out really, really well. It has a locker in the back, but the front is open. The suspension is a little bit wider than stock. It's 2 inches over in the front, 2 inches over in the back. And it's just been a really, really fun truck. It's got the V8 out of the Toyota Tundra. So that's a 2UZ 4.7 V8, but I was able to keep the 5-speed manual transmission. The thing is perfect Now, most recently, I took it on a trip that I actually ended up doing a bunch of wheeling on, and I was actually very impressed with how the IFS system worked on this truck, even without a locker in the front. So that got me thinking of a vehicle that I might want to build using this same suspension setup, but instead of building an adventure truck, this time I kind of want to build a rock crawlery truck, but using IFS. Now, I don't want to cut up this 05 Tacoma and turn it into a rock crawler because, man, the truck's perfect just the way it is. But what I want to do instead is take everything that's cool about this truck, use another standard cab short bed pickup truck that's also a pretty iconic vehicle, and build a rock crawler out of that.
Now, this is the truck that I was talking about. This is an FJ45. This is probably one of the most famous Toyota pickup trucks ever built. The hard part is finding an FJ45 is near impossible. So what I opted to do is this, a 100% aftermarket body kit that looks like an FJ45. The cool thing is there's some changes that they make to this particular body to make it even better. There's a 6-inch stretch in the cab, so that means more space on the inside of the truck, because for some reason, FJs are built for incredibly short people. The back has a bed. Normally the bed is 18.5 inches longer, so it has this huge overhang on the back, but they were able to bob the bed to give me a better approach and departure angle on the vehicle. The plan right now is simple. We have this body in the shop, and I got all the other parts for it. I got the grills, I got the fenders, I got everything. We're gonna assemble the body so I can pull some measurements, and that'll tell me how big the frame needs to be for this truck. Parts are over here. Oh, you're gonna do, oh, I like this. I like this plan. This is a good plan. Like a puppy dog house. Let's get some vice grippy thingies. Now, I've mocked up the entire body here so we can figure out what the wheelbase is gonna be. And that's the distance between the front and rear tire. Now, our plan right now is possibly to stretch the front end out just a tiny little bit, maybe an inch or two from the center of that wheel opening. And by doing that, we end up with a wheelbase of 116 inches, which is perfect for a hardcore throwdown crawler. So now that I know what my wheelbase is gonna be, it's time to start building a frame. Because we're not buying a frame, we're build it. Because it's built for off-road. Ah! Flip it over. Come on, frame piece. One side. The cool thing about modern frames is they're actually designed to always be taken apart. So this front frame clip is actually out of a 2011 Toyota Tacoma. Now, the reason that I've chosen this, as I said before, I want to build an IFS rock crawler. By using this Tacoma front clip, I'm gonna be able to use an off-the-shelf front suspension to get the IFS. There's a bunch of options out there. But the back of the truck, I still need a custom frame. So I cut the frame at this joint right here. This is where, from the factory, the frames are basically welded together. Whether you order a crew cab long bed, 4-door long bed, 4-door short bed, this basically make the frame shorter and longer right in this joint right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this frame up on the fab table, and then we can go ahead and start building a custom 2x3 rectangular frame off of this section right here. So I'll have the strength and the functionality of the Toyota stuff up front, and then it's gonna be all custom from here to the back. All right, I need to make some brackets on my plasma table. Yoink. So you can see how our new frame is going to be built. I'm using the all 2x3 3/16 wall rectangular tubing, which I like to use when I build these frames. It's super strong. It basically makes it fully boxed, prevents it from flexing. It is obviously a different size than the factory frame where it keyed into this sleeve, but that's okay. What we can do in the end is basically do what's called a pie cut. So I'll come in here and I'll basically cut this frame back, cut it down at the bottom, and then fold this bottom piece up until it catches our new frame. So the plan right now will be to tack this in up here, and then we can drop the cab on, see what it looks like.
So with the body now on our new frame, I'm pretty happy with how it's sitting. The fender does have some clearance issues, obviously as expected. The upper, basically, coilover mount or McPherson strut mount in the Toyota doesn't clear the inner fender, so we have to trim around that. And the fender's actually also contacting the frame back here. It's not letting it slide all the way back into position. So I think before we make the official decision as to where we're gonna cut the front of the frame, I'll trim the fender to fit, and then we'll make sure it bolts up, get the whole front end put back together, and then we can start working on the frame that's gonna hold up our truck bed. I need a pen. Like a glove. So today I'm creating a one-of-a-kind FJ45 pickup truck. We've basically taken the front half of this Tacoma frame, it's on the fab table, and now we have the new frame underneath the cab. I'm really happy with how this is working out so far. I've trimmed my front fender to get around the tower, but this is the front cab mount on the Tacoma. Anyone who's in the Toyota world knows that there's a couple issues with this cab mount. Normally on any Toyota that runs a 37-inch tall tire or bigger, the tire actually hits this cab mount, and I plan to run 40s on this. And also, as you can see, it is not fitting inside the body lines of our cab at all. So this has to go, and then we can put the front end on our body. Now, as I get this body fit to the frame, I had a feeling that there was gonna be an opportunity where I may have to modify some of the parts to fit the wheel track or width of the vehicle as the suspension goes underneath it, namely the front fenders as well as the rear fender flares. Now, the problem is these are very complex curves to make, and so I went ahead and had Woodward Fab send me their new heavy-duty 14-gauge shrinker stretcher. Now, this is the strongest shrinker stretcher that Woodward Fab makes. It can handle up to 16-gauge steel and 14-gauge aluminum. When you're dealing with a shrinker stretcher, it's actually pretty cool. The way it works is you're basically gonna put your material in. This is just a quick 90 that I pulled together, and all you do on this one is you just adjust the jaws good and tight, and then you've got this little foot kicker on the bottom. And what that does, it pulls the jaws together. And what you're ending up doing is you're basically creating this curve in the panel by shrinking this side of it. So the more I kick this, the tighter it pulls this section of material together, and you can see it's essentially pulling this piece around. You wouldn't be able to get this curve without a shrinker because it's basically pulling this piece together and it's gonna draw this piece around. That's how you get these curves in these panels, these compound curves. This will just make fine-tuning this body to fit this frame a lot easier.
Now we're ready to create the rear frame section for this FJ45. So I break out my Woodward Fab horizontal bandsaw to cut some kick-up pieces and then tack them to some longer straight pieces of the frame. I tack together one piece of the frame and then mirror the second side right on top of it so I know they will match perfectly. Then I can attach these rear frame sections onto the midsection of our frame.
So the plan right now will be basically weld this up so it's a little bit stiffer so we can take it off the fab table, get it on the ground, and throw the bed on the back, see how it looks. Boom! That's looking pretty sweet. So with the body mocked up on our new custom frame, we can go ahead and start taking care of some of the finishing touches that we're gonna do to this vehicle, because really, we're not changing the body or the bed at all. I'm gonna be using a bunch of Duplicolor truck bed coating on this vehicle. Now, I like the Duplicolor truck bed coating because it is a textured, impact-resistant coating that you can do yourself, and it comes with a bunch of different application methods. If you're doing a small job, just go ahead and get yourself a quart. Big job, like an entire truck bed like this, get a gallon. And then for fine detail work, you can use the aerosol. You can also get the application gun. It just makes applying it a lot better. On this rig, we're gonna be using it essentially everywhere. I'm talking about inside the cab, under the cab, in the bed, under the bed, and then probably the most unique way that we're gonna be using it on this project is underneath this fiberglass hood. It really will finish out the inside of the look of this hood without having to do a bunch of body work and painting to it, because the fiberglass has that really kind of like green textured look right now. You don't want to see that when you open the hood. So by putting Duplicolor truck bed coating on there, it'll really finish out the look of that. Inside the truck cab, went ahead and prepped it with a DA sander with some 80 grit, and then wiped it down as well with some of that same wax and grease remover, and then just sprayed the inside with the Duplicolor application gun and the 1 gallon can. The nice thing about the Duplicolor truck bed coating is it's dry to the touch in 1 hour, but you want to give it the full 2 hours before you start handling it, and you'll end up with that nice uniform finish. You can adjust the finished texture of the Duplicolor truck bed coating by adjusting the air pressure that flows through the gun, or Duplicolor says you can also try trimming the length of the rubber hose to get the texture that you want.
This tip is brought to you by Duplicolor. Restore, restyle, and protect your vehicles in your garage.
I got half the inside of the tub done. I'll go ahead and finish out the other half, and then we'll just let this dry. We're actually going to move on to the rear suspension, sort of off gas for a little bit. So for now, moving on to the suspension. Welcome back to the Build for Off-Road shop, where I'm working on my custom FJ45 rock crawler plan here. Now, the idea here is to build an IFS hardcore rock crawler, but out back, I'm still gonna be using a solid axle. And for me, my favorite solid axle by choice will always be a fabricated 9-inch axle. The nice thing about the fabricated 9-inch axle, you get all the strength from the 9-inch gear set, but you get a lot more ground clearance than you get from pretty much any other 1-ton axle out there because the housing itself is so small. The other nice thing about it, it's very easy to do custom suspension, which is what we're gonna do on this. And here's a little teaser in case you haven't figured out. I had the unit bearing sent to me with the 6-on-5.5 Toyota bolt pattern that is gonna match up with the front of our Toyota suspension, because I am gonna be using a lot of Toyota parts up front, even though they're not gonna be just stock Toyota parts. So what I'm gonna do now is basically figure out the location of this rear housing underneath the chassis, and then we'll lock it in with a couple pieces of scrap tubing, and then we can start building some suspension. Ta-da! The suspension in the rear of the FJ is going to be a triangulated 4-link with trailing arms. Now, this trailing arm kit is the same one that I have on my Jeep LJ that I love a lot. It's basically cut out of this 3/16 box tubing, and then you basically just assemble it yourself. Makes it incredibly strong. Means you can bash it on rocks all day long and there's no issues. You can opt to get it with a Heim joint and uniball, and it's just basically a really good, easy way to get trailing arms in the back of your rig. This is a dual shock setup, so it'll end up with a coilover and a bypass. You can also just get a single shock setup if you want, because remember, my whole idea here is kind of like budget Ultra 4, even though I'm spending some money. I got like IFS up front, I'm gonna have trailing arms in the back with my super cool fabricated 9-inches. So I'm gonna assemble one of these arms, mock it up, and then we can start making some brackets for the axles. Now we connect the dots. Now, as we work through the suspension on this chassis, I like to also plan out where my brake lines are gonna go, and the best way to do that is obviously have the brakes on the vehicle. Now, the cool thing about this truck is it's kind of this mix of custom parts and a bunch of OE parts. Now, that doesn't mean that you're stuck with just boring old OE brakes. You can opt for a brake upgrade like this Power Stop Brakes Z36 truck and tow brake package. Now, it comes with drilled and slotted rotors that help keep the temperatures down in your brake system, and pads that are specifically designed to work with those brake rotors. And the nice thing is they bed into the rotors really well to improve your braking, but also they're a low dust pad, so you don't end up with a lot of brake dust on your wheels. Now, you can opt, like I did, for calipers powder coated for your vehicle. And I chose these red powder coated calipers. And these are actually for a Toyota pickup truck that will match the front frame clip that we put on the back. Now, the nice thing about the calipers is they're fully rebuilt and ready to roll with all new pistons, boots, and seals. And the kit also comes with everything else you need to completely assemble the brakes: pins, lube, all the stainless sliders, everything that we're gonna need. We will have to build a bracket for these calipers to work with our rear axle, which is not a big deal because the Toyota calipers are actually what's called a fixed caliper. That means that we have pistons on both sides. This is a great upgrade if you've just taken your Toyota, maybe you put a little bit of a lift kit on it, you got larger wheels and tires, you want to increase the stopping power. But we're taking advantage of this basically because we can have upgraded brakes on a factory setup up front and even a custom setup out back.
So of course, I will use my CNC plasma table to design and cut out a caliper bracket for our new brake setup, and I'll bolt it on after the break.
I went ahead and cut out these plates. These are the link mount tabs that are gonna go on the axle for our trailing arm. Obviously, it is not fully completed. This is all just mock-up as we design the suspension. Now, one thing that I am checking for is space for our shocks. There's obviously gonna be a coil carrier and a bypass shock in the back, and I'm trying to figure out if I can fit them underneath or inside the wheel tub of our pickup truck bed. Now, one thing I should mention about those shocks, when it comes to mounting them, we're not just gonna use ordinary off-the-shelf hardware. We're gonna be using ARP fasteners for all the suspension components in this truck. Now, ARP fasteners are pretty commonly known if you're in the engine building world. They're a common upgrade for one-time use or torque to yield fasteners, but they offer fasteners in many different sizes. So you can go ahead and just spec, in this case here, what I've done is a 1/2-inch bolt. It is precision ground, so it is exactly 1/2 inch. It's made out of high quality chromoly, heat treated, and then the threads are rolled after the heat treating process. That just makes them a lot stronger. You can get them in stainless or the black oxide coating, and as I said, any size you want. Basically, when they're in here, they'll support our shocks at the bottom and the top, and it's just one extra level of insurance when you're designing custom suspension.
It's now time to start assembling the rear brakes. As I said, this truck is a mix of custom and OE parts, so these Toyota brakes from PowerStop will bolt right up to the rear. I just had to make this custom caliper bracket on the CNC plasma table, bolt it on, and then I can find the proper position for the caliper and weld it into place.
Pow! I love building stuff out of other stuff. Boom! With our rear caliper in place, well, actually, this is an entire front caliper assembly and rotor off of a Toyota 4Runner. We basically modified it to fit the rear axle. We do need to address the brake lines because obviously this is full custom. Now, up front, what I'm actually going to be using is just a set of off-the-shelf Crown Performance full braided brake lines specifically for a Toyota Tacoma with just a little bit extra length in them because of the lift that we're going to have in the front of this truck. Now, I always use Crown brake lines on all of my vehicles, and it's for a very simple reason. Brakes, they are incredibly important, and I have never had a failure with Crown brake lines in the many, many years that I've been installing them on rigs. And it's mainly because of their multi-layered design. If you were to take apart some other people's braided brake hoses, all you're gonna find is this Teflon inner sheath and then like a braiding on the outside. The Crown Performance line has multiple layers to prevent what's called brake line swell. And that can become an issue when you start doing what I plan to do on the back of this truck. These are for the front. This is one of the brake lines for the back. Now, this is a full braided brake line with an AN fitting at both ends, and this will actually attach to the caliper, go down the axle, up the upper link, all the way up the chassis, all the way to the adjustable proportioning valve that's coming out of the master cylinder. And the one-piece fittings that are designed by Crown prevent leak points in the system, whether it's a fitting like this that will attach to a regular steel brake line or a fitting like their ANs that screw into adapters that you can put into proportioning valves, master cylinders, or in my case, one's gonna go right into that caliper. So at this point, we basically have maybe a quarter of our rear suspension done. So now the plan is pretty simple. The truck is back on the fab table. I'll make sure it's good and square, make sure the body is set up on the chassis right,
And then I'll go ahead and just do a whole bunch of cutting, welding, and grinding. Those are my 3 favorite things. Now all that's left to do to wrap up this rear suspension is build some upper link mounts and some frame side mounts, tack it all into place, and we have a custom rear trailing arm setup. Today in the shop, we're bringing in my 1968 Jeepster. We're going to kick things off by making some body modifications, then deal with some cosmetic upgrades that I have planned for this rig before we throw it up on the lift, put the drivetrain back in, and I'll show you how to make engine mounts and a custom transmission crossmember. This is a 1968 Jeepster. As I've been slowly collecting almost every single model of Jeep out there, this is one that I've been dying to build for a while. Now, I've already started this project. It's sitting on a custom chassis, has some Gladiator axles, front and rear, and a custom Gladiator long travel suspension system. Now, today we're just gonna be basically continuing on with this project. There's a few things I gotta take care of before I move any further down the road with this. The first thing we're gonna deal with is the paint. And no, we are not touching the beautiful patina that is on this Jeep. When I found this in a field in Colorado, I knew that it looked absolutely perfect just the way it was. But we do want to preserve it a little bit, basically stop it from continuing to rust, so we're gonna deal with that. And then I have a little bit of a clearance issue to fit the tires and wheels that I've chosen for this vehicle in the back. So that's probably where we're gonna start. The only downfall to the Jeepster is the fact that it was really never designed from the factory to be an off-road vehicle. It was kind of Jeep's sort of basically introduction into the car market. So they were never designed to be lifted and have larger wheels and tires on them. And that is one of the reasons why the wheel openings in the back of the tub are actually fairly small. They're really, really narrow, and they don't sit up as high, even as much as the front fenders. Now, we've put these larger wheels and tires obviously on here because this is now an off-road vehicle. And we have to change this. I want more up travel, so obviously I need to move this up. And then we also have to make the opening larger. So we're gonna have to basically cut it all the way back here. The problem is the Jeepster really has no style on this side. It just basically is just a flat panel. There's no real flares to bolt on. So I think the plan will be to try to reuse this molding, I guess it would be what we call it. It's basically this body line. So the first step is gonna be to, I guess, cut this out, and then we'll figure out where it's gonna sit. Oops. There we go. So we've cut the wheel opening molding off, or basically the stamped piece off, and raised it up. I've actually got over 4 inches of height here. Now, there's 2 things you need to watch out for when you do this. Sometimes when you cut the opening like this, you're gonna end up having to stretch the wheel opening longer, but we're not gonna have to do that right here because as you can see, I have plenty of room for up travel right here. This is a 4-length, so the actual tire moves back. I have lots of room back here. The problem we have now is just by moving this up, as you can see, this body line used to line up down here. Now, we wanna basically get that piece of fender back down to here. And the easiest way to do that is gonna basically be to come in here and cut this section right here. And then we're just gonna move this down, and then we're gonna have to make a filler piece to basically fill in. It's gonna be a lot easier to make a couple small filler pieces than it is to try to recreate this shape here, and even more so back here, because this has got this little curve in the stamp section right here. So if I cut this, drop them, and I'll actually probably just clamp them on a set of clamps, and then we'll start building from there.
Now, I'd originally kind of hoped that I could possibly reuse some of the original sheet metal to make this patch, but that wasn't going to happen. There's just not enough there. So I just bent up this piece of 16 gauge. The nice thing about working on a vehicle with this beautiful patina on it is you can do really, really sort of like questionable weld joints like this and just grind them off, and then you're done. There's no need to put filler on there or anything. And we don't have to actually even paint it. We could just leave it alone and let it rust, but it kind of sticks out because it's a pretty fresh piece of metal. So my plan is, since I cut it right in this section right here where there's this white sort of primer and gray primer coming down here, is I think I'm just gonna try to basically continue this white and gray mix. I've got some of my Duplicolor rattle cans off my Duplicolor rack in the back, and I'm just gonna kind of try to come in here and like be all arty with it. See what happens. We'll do the grapefruit. What's the worst thing that can happen? Nothing. Now, it's not perfect because I didn't really have any of this base blue in my rack, so I'd probably want to go and find a little bit of this. It looks like almost like a robin's egg blue, just to finish it out. But ideally right now, you can see this is the idea. We basically put this patch in, just hit it with some spray paint. It actually blends in pretty good. Plus, you got to remember, this is an off-road truck. We're probably gonna, the first rock, I hope, will hit right here, and then we don't necessarily have to worry about that. So what I'll do next is obviously finish out the stretch on the front, and then we'll do the other side. And then the decision will be, do we make these just, do we attach them with screws, put them on the side? Do we weld them in? Do we do a really nice finish weld, or just basically butt weld it? I haven't really decided that yet. But I do want to show you a way that we can preserve the patina on this truck as well as replicate it like we did right here. And the front of the truck is getting a little rusty, so we kind of want to stop that from happening anymore. Now, this is what's called an oil-based paint additive. Now, what it's really designed for is to basically thin out oil-based paint for sign painters. And it's actually a sign painter that turned me onto this. But what it essentially does is I'm almost just covering this in a really, really light film of the oil that's in this liquid. And it's not going to stop the vehicle from patining, so it still will continue to get that nice patina look. It's not like clear coat where we're basically putting a shiny coating on the outside of it and just basically locking this all in, or even a matte clear coat where it's gonna stop it. This will still allow our patina to continue to just evolve as we use the vehicle, but at the same time, it's supposed to prevent it from making that transition from just surface rust into like eating away at the panel rust, because the oil basically gets into this surface rust, just kind of locks it together. It has a really unique look. It's not real shiny, not real dull. The nice thing is you can just apply it anytime you want with just another piece of Scotch-Brite. And I think it's cool. It gives it a good look. And even though we want the body patinaed, I got something special planned for the roof. A trend that I've seen a lot on really sort of high-end hot rod patina builds is to basically create a two-tone finish. So you end up with a patinaed vehicle, and then on the roof of the vehicle, you actually finish it out and make it look really good. So that's kind of what my plan here is to replicate. And I'm gonna use the Duplicolor paint shop finish system. Now, the nice thing about the Duplicolor paint shop system is that it is 100% ready to spray right out of the can. You simply pour it into the gun and you're good to go. There's no recoat window, so we can basically spray it, let it sit for a few minutes. If we don't like the coverage, we can go back and just recoat over it again and again and again until we get the coverage and the look that we want. It's available in a bunch of different colors, and I chose this Sandstorm Tan because I think it's gonna look really good compared to the patina on the rest of the vehicle and might even match our wheels down below. Now, it's great for all different automotive applications, everything from obviously Jeeps, hot rods, motorcycles, side-by-sides, pretty much anything that you want to paint, it works really well for. You do want to cover it with some type of clear coat, and Duplicolor offers a bunch of different clear coats. I had them send me some matte clear coat because I don't want this super shiny, so I think a matte clear coat will end up giving us a look that we want. The matte clear coat is UV, scratch, and heat resistant up to 250 degrees, and it will protect our base coat, being the Sandstorm Tan, when we're out on the trail. Every body man in the world is looking at this right now going, aren't you gonna fix those dents? And my answer is no. I'm gonna go over the whole roof with the Scotch-Brite pad just to roughen up the paint that's already on here. We're not gonna repair any of the rust spots or any of the dents because this is an off-road vehicle and it's probably gonna get dented in the future. So the plan here is just to clean it up, prep it, and paint right over it, because we really want that juxtaposition between the brand new Sandstorm Tan and the classic patina. We want those hard lines. So we'll mask off the body, mask off the windshield, all the glass, blow it off, and then we'll just start laying down our paint shop finish system Sandstorm Tan. The nice thing is it doesn't have any recoat window, so we can just basically jump around the truck, make sure we have 50% overlap on each run of the gun as we move it around. And the whole goal here is just basically to take this roof from white to this cool tan color. Then we'll hit it with some matte clear and let it dry. We just wanted a nice matte finish to sort of go with our patina truck, and I think it turned out great. So the next step in our Jeepster is actually going to be to put the badges back on the truck. And we're actually going to make them custom to match our roof. And we're going to add one more badge, and that is this trail-rated Jeep badge that we pulled off of a Jeep out back. Now, to attach this badge to the truck, we're going to be using some JB Weld clear weld out of their new clear weld syringe. Now, this is probably not the most common application for the world's strongest epoxy, being the JB Weld 5-minute epoxy. What you'd normally use it for is something like this. This is the intercooler that is for the engine that's underneath the hood of this Jeepster. And when we took this whole thing apart, we noticed that the little tab off of this, I think this is some sort of air diffuser for the pressure sensor, is broken off right here. And I don't even know how to look this part up and even find it, even if I could. It's probably gonna be a dealer-only item. So what we're gonna do is we're going to use the clear weld syringe to fix this particular piece of plastic, because the clear weld, it works on glass, wood, pretty much any plastic and metal, and it's gonna dry in 5 minutes, cure in an hour, and there's a couple different ways we can use it. We can just push a little bit out of the syringe, mix it here on the back of the card, or even this little automatic mixing syringe right here, which is what I'm probably gonna use, because that's gonna allow me to get right down into the spot where I need to fix this little tab. That was so easy. And I'll just sit here for 5 minutes. Hand me 2 of the magnets off that white table that we're holding the welding poster up. Boom. Our clear weld repair on our intercooler is good and done. I'm still gonna wait up to an hour to allow it to cure completely. The badge is now on the side of the Jeep, and our other badges are ready to basically bolt back on to finish the transformation of the Jeep that we planned today. Now, the next thing I wanna do is start working on getting the drivetrain and everything back into this rig, start talking about a few things we need to make some adjustments with there. So, with this intercooler out of the way, well, I think we'll put this on the lift for that. That's what we might do. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Little wasp nest here. Thank you. There we go. Yeah, do it this way. Welcome back to the shop where we have our 1968 Jeepster in here. Now, this project, if you remember, is all built around this engine right here. This is a 3.5 twin turbocharged EcoBoost engine. And the reason that I chose this engine for this vehicle, because we're trying to mix like old and new with this truck. And some of these old Jeepsters actually came with small V6s underneath the hood.
Now, one thing about this engine is it is a very modern engine. As I said before, it's twin turbocharged, direct injected. It's got variable valve timing, so it has cam phasers on it. And there's a lot going on inside this engine. And you are relying on the engine oil to do a lot inside that engine. The engine oil actually works as a small hydraulic pump to move the cam phasers for the valve timing. And it also lubricates our turbochargers. Now, whenever you push oil into a turbocharger, it gets incredibly hot because of the exhaust gases moving through the turbocharger as well. That can cause the oil to break down, and it can actually leave a lot of oil varnish on the turbo. Now, that oil varnish creates something that is called stiction. It's basically old oil stuck inside that turbo. So you need to service these engines a lot, and you need to pay attention to that maintenance. And a great way to maintain these modern engines is with the Hot Shots Secrets 2-step engine treatment. So what we have is the first time you change the oil, you're gonna add the stiction eliminator. What the stiction eliminator is gonna do, it's gonna go into that engine. Any of that oil that's been baked on, as an example, in that turbo bearing, or maybe up in the cam phasers where the engine's getting hot, it's gonna strip that oil out, help you basically break it down, get it back down to the bottom of the pan, essentially eliminating that stiction. Then on the next oil change, you're gonna add the Hot Shots Secret FR3 friction reducer. Now what that's gonna do, it's gonna prevent that stiction from happening. It's a nano lubricant that's designed for anytime you have metal on metal contact of parts. It's basically gonna impregnate the upper level of that metal and give you additional lubrication in the system. It'll help prevent the stiction, it'll help the engine run a lot cooler, last a lot longer, and it'll help the oil do its job inside the engine, and it will maintain the life of the oil and also the life of the engine. Oh, why? Clearance for the Turbski. Now I went ahead and clearanced the frame just to give me a little extra space around these two turbos on both the driver's and the passenger side of the vehicle. Now the first step when mounting an engine like this is just locating it inside the vehicle. So what you need to watch out for is distance from the back of the engine to the firewall. You want to make sure there's lots of space there, nothing's getting pinched. You want to make sure there's obviously enough space up front, which we know the fenders go well past the front of this motor. And then you just want to make sure that there's lots of room for the hood to go on, which we're also clear. Then I put the back of the transmission on a jack, get it set there, and then we got the engine tilted back just a tiny little bit. I'll throw a piece of angle iron across the front, lock it into place with a couple of clamps so we can get the crane out of the way, and then we can start building some mounts. Right there, mounts.
All right, should I put a little smile in there for you?
I use the angle iron on the front of the motor because basically if we have to, we can shift it back and forth. So it's just resting on the harmonic balancer, and then you can basically cheat the engine back and forth. Right now I have the engine offset to one side, 3/4 of an inch towards the passenger side. That just makes it a lot easier to get a drive shaft down from the transfer case down to the front axle. So now with the engine locked into place, it's time to start building motor mounts. Now, a motor mount that I like to use a lot, these are actually just Toyota pickup truck mounts. These are just part store rubber mounts. They're super cheap. And the nice thing is they're very easy to build off because it's got a nice flat plate on the back, and then it's just a simple single stud. So cut this plate out on the plasma table. This will be the first part of the mount. It'll come down here on the frame, mount on an angle, we'll throw some gussets on it, and then we'll build the rest of the mounts to pick up with these plates. Those plates. Back to the plasma table. Yeah. Once the motor mounts are figured out, the next step is the transmission mount. Now you have a couple options here. As I said before, the motor is offset to the passenger side 3/4 of an inch, which is pretty standard when you're building these four-wheel drive trucks. So you don't necessarily need to offset the transmission. You actually can have your drivetrain in there kind of crooked. It's not going to affect anything. The reason we offset it, as I said before, is to give us more space for the drive shaft to get down to that front drive line. It also helps with a little bit of weight distribution because you got to remember the transfer case basically hanging off
on this driver's side. I'm going to square it up. I'm going to move this transmission over towards the passenger side, so it is also 3/4 of an inch offset. I am concerned about the floor on this vehicle. I think when we get the transfer case in, I'm probably going to be cutting the floor up, but that's just the way it's going to work on this truck. There's no hump in this floor because in the old days, these 60s vehicles, transfer cases were literally this big around. They were incredibly tiny. Nowadays, we're dealing with much larger transfer cases, and the fact that this transmission is also bigger as well. So the first step here will be to support your transmission temporarily. We put this brace underneath it to get up in the air. I'll put this pole jack underneath it. We'll take the brace off, and then we can take some measurements, get our transmission mount into place, start cutting up some plate. When you're building a transmission cross member, it's very different between a 4-wheel drive vehicle and a 2-wheel drive vehicle. If this was a 2-wheel drive car, we'd simply duplicate the basically the kick-up that we call it on the passenger side of the vehicle. We do that mainly for ground clearance in an off-road car, but you can't do that on a 4-wheel drive car because if I came over here and kicked this transmission cross member up and came across like this, well, the transfer case, it mounts right back here. The front output's going to probably be sitting somewhere in this location right here. And if I had a big bar here, there's gonna be nowhere for the front drive shaft to get through. So what you have to do is you gotta basically continue this lower part of your cross member across. But what I'll do is I'll just continue this piece along here and then we'll kick it up over here. That way there's room for that front drive shaft. With the drivetrain now locked into place, the next step, honestly, tear this whole thing apart. We have to weld in those motor mounts for good, finish up that cross member, finish up all the suspension mounts. Basically just a pile of welding and then coat the chassis and then begin the reassembly process, probably start wiring inside of this body. But we're gonna save that for another day because right now I'm just happy to have the engine finally inside the chassis. What is that sound? Do you have a bird in the shop? And it causes what's called stiction. And that bird is really bothering the out of me right now. Hi, buddy. Open the door. Here you go. You're free. Run. There you go. Woo-hoo! It is a pile of firsts for me here in the shop. The first time I've ever built a hardcore off-road rock crawler leaving the front IFS. The first time I've ever installed portals onto a vehicle, and the first time I've ever built my own swing set custom steering system. You're gonna wanna check this out. The last time we had this FJ45 pickup truck here in the shop, we essentially started with just a body on the floor and built the entire chassis utilizing a bunch of this 2x3 rectangular steel and then a front clip out of a Toyota Tacoma. Now, today's plan is to knock out the front suspension since the rear is pretty much done. But before we move up there, I just want to make a couple things finished here at the back because now that our new trailing arms are in place, I gotta cut a few things out that I've already welded in place. Now we get the third tool. Ta-da! Now this rear suspension is what's called a trailing arm rear suspension. So that means that instead of the shocks mounting back here off the axle, they're actually mounted further forward on this trailing arm. And this is set up for 2 shocks. We're gonna have a coil carrier, that's what this shock is, and then a bypass shock is gonna sit right behind it. Now the benefit to this is we get a lot more wheel travel with a smaller shock. So I got a 12-inch travel shock for this arm. This should give us, believe it or not, almost 16 to 17 inches of actual wheel travel in the suspension as it cycles. Now we cut this frame out to make room for the upper shock mount because what will happen is a tube will come off here, come up here, and then there'll be a plate up here for this shock to mount on, then it'll tie back into our frame back here. The question is this suspension right now at full stuff, or basically as far up as it's gonna go in the suspension travel of the truck, or is this tire, can it go up a little bit higher before it starts contacting the body? That will determine the height
of this upper shock mount. So before we do anything in here, we are going to bring the bed back in, drop it on, and mount up a wheel and tire. Bring her forward. Ideally, I think I might want a little bit more up travel in the rear suspension, but to determine that, we have to put the wheel and tire package on the back of the truck. Now, on the back of this FJ, we're gonna be running these Toyo Open Country MTs. This is a 37 by 13.5 tire. It's a great hardcore off-road tire because it's got a really aggressive open tread design, gives you lots of traction in the dirt, has these unique hook block treads that maximize traction when the tire is aired down. And then of course, it also has this, what they call a shoulder tread, which is basically on the sidewall of the tire. It just gives you more traction in things like mud and snow and can also help when turning in deep ruts in sand. It really is a good all-around hardcore off-road tire, but when you air it up, the center is a little bit narrower than the outer edges, so it runs nice and quiet on the road. Jack her up. We got ways to go. There we go. So their tire and wheel mounted up, there's two issues that I see right now. Number one, this is the suspension at full stuff, and I need this tire to go a lot higher. Ideally, I want the top of this tire to probably be at least at this body line, maybe even a little bit higher. The wheel well opening is not lined up perfect here. Now we can cheat this bed back and forth. We don't have the cab officially mounted yet, so we can kind of fine tune everything. No matter what, this wheel opening is gonna have to be larger. So that means a bunch of cutting, grinding, and possibly some welding, and there are some tips and tricks that can make working with aluminum when you're welding a lot easier. Now, if you have a high quality custom aluminum body like we have for our FJ45, you don't just want to start cutting on it and welding on the aluminum. You want to practice with a similar piece of aluminum just to make sure that everything's going to work out well. Now, this is a piece of scrap from a body off of a different project, but it's from the same manufacturer. So I know it's the same alloy of aluminum that our FJ45 is made out of. And one of the most popular ways to weld aluminum is going to be with a TIG welder. The problem is if you're going to TIG weld aluminum, you need a machine that is capable of AC TIG welding. Now that's not difficult. You can get a machine like this ESAB Rebel. This is the AC DC machine. And it's basically a multi-process welder. It can do MIG, stick, TIG, and it can also do AC or DC TIG. But if you don't have access to a TIG welder, you can weld aluminum with what's called a spool gun. Now this is a Tweco spool gun. It's specifically designed to work with the ESAB Rebel because the Rebel line has welders that don't have AC TIG capabilities. So this spool gun will allow you to turn your ESAB Rebel into an aluminum welder without needing that AC TIG function. In order to convert your MIG machine over to a machine that can spool gun aluminum, you will need a tank of pure argon to feed down to the gun. This particular Rebel, because it has that AC TIG feature, it has an internal solenoid, so I'm able to hook my spool gun up to the front of the machine. Some of the benefits of the spool gun, obviously you saw it's incredibly fast, incredibly easy to do. It's no different than a standard MIG welder. It works really well on thick material, like this material here. Thin material, like if we were doing maybe a radiator tank, this is not the machine to use. At that point, you definitely want to step over into a TIG welder. But if you don't have the access to a TIG machine and you need to weld some thicker aluminum, the spool gun is honestly the easiest way to go.
This Build for Off-Road Welding Tip of the Trade is brought to you by ESAB.
Now, the reason that I showed you that tip on how to spool gun aluminum is because of this hole right here. Obviously, by moving this fender flare up into the new location that we want, we basically stretch the wheel well all the way out. And now the opening for the wheel well is actually going into the inside of the bed. So to fix that, I'm actually gonna have to cut the wheel well out of the inside of this bed, stretch it, and weld in a patch panel. To do that, I'm gonna be using the spool gun because it works so well on this thick aluminum. But I don't know if I want this tire to go up a little bit higher or not. And I'm gonna make that decision when we get the front of the truck together, and I'll determine how high the tire goes up in the front, and then I'll know how much wheel travel I wanna have in the back. So before I go any further back here, we're gonna spin this truck around and start working on the front suspension, and it is pretty cool. Today we are back working on our FJ45 pickup truck. We've already basically finished out the rear suspension. There is some body modifications that are gonna have to happen in order to get a little bit more wheel travel. But before I go ahead with those, I wanna get the front suspension put together to figure out exactly how much wheel travel I'm gonna have in the front and also determine the final position of the body on this frame. Now, if you remember, our frame is a completely custom frame that we built here in the shop, and it started with this front frame clip out of a 2006 Toyota Tacoma. This truck from the factory would be IFS, the Tacoma, not the FJ45. The FJ45 was a solid axle. But I want to leave this truck IFS because we got something super cool planned for the front of this vehicle. But to mock it all up, the first step is going to be to remove all this front clip sheet metal, just so it's easier to get at all the parts. One of the latest advancements in four-wheel drive technology is this bad boy right here. This is what is called a portal box. Now, what a portal does is essentially it gives you lift inside the vehicle's suspension because the axle enters the portal at a higher point than the center of the wheel. Got to remember, from the factory on a Toyota Tacoma, the axle comes down through here and comes out in the center of your unit bearing. But in a portal, the axle is going to basically come in here, and it goes through a set of gears that then give it more gear reduction, and then it attaches to the wheel at this point right here. So we get a couple things. We're going to get more ground clearance. We're actually going to get a mechanical advantage inside this portal, and you can spec different gear ratios. I spec'd a gear ratio that will match a 430 gear ratio in the front diff to a 529 gear ratio in the back, because remember, we don't have portals on that rear axle. The package that we're building right here with a bulletproof 9-inch in the back and this portal up front is very similar to what you see in a lot of stock class Ultra 4 cars that are basically dominating in the desert and in the rocks. This became a game changer in IFS because for the longest time, all IFS rigs, we didn't want to take them rock crawling because we put too much stress on all the components in that front end. But by adding this portal box and moving the load inside the differential from the differential and the half shaft out here into the portal box, it just solved all of those problems. If these are available for pretty much a bunch of different applications, Tacoma, Jeep, Ranger, and even the new Colorado, and they are offered in a full bolt-on kit. So if you just had a truck and you just wanted to lift it, this would be a great way to do it. And then you'd also get the gear ratio for those larger wheels and tires. We're using it just because it's cool, it's bomb-proof, it's basically gonna make this thing like an Ultra 4 car, and it's gonna give me more ground clearance on the front end of this truck, even though we still have IFS up front. And it just bolts on to the factory control arms. Shabam. These portals are a game changer when it comes to building a rig with IFS. Yes, they're not cheap, but it allows me to still be able to use that front Toyota front differential that I plan to run and not worry about blowing up the ring gear. So what I'll do right now is mock up the other side, and then I got something pretty cool to show you. Now that we have all of our tires mounted up, I want to show you a pretty unique new inflation and deflation system. Now, for a while now, Morflate has been my go-to air up, air down tool on the trail. And the reason I like it is because all I have to do is move this small dual compressor setup from vehicle to vehicle, grab the round little bag that holds all my hoses, and I can easily inflate and deflate all my tires when I get to the trail. But here is the cool part. Morflate now has a new fully electronic air hub system. So when you get to the trail, you can use the Morflate air hub to air down as well. Simply hook up all 4 hoses, select the pressure that you want your tires at, and it will do all the work for you. It allows you to just basically walk around your rig, get the rest of your stuff ready, and you don't have to worry about over deflating one of your tires. This won't just be for field use. Let's say you're in a situation like this. We've just filled up these 4 tires, just got them off the tire machine, and we want to get them all set to the same pressure. I can hook up shop air to the Morflate air hub and just energize it. And what it's gonna do is basically monitor the pressure of these tires as it's filling them up. And it's gonna check that pressure periodically as it goes. It has a self-learning algorithm that basically learns how your tires are inflating. So it's not just gonna be like a fill the tires up and then maybe you'll check it. You'll hear it turn on and off just like that while you use it. And it's basically learning how fast and how quickly your tires fill up. So what I can do now is simply leave this hose hooked up, walk away, do other stuff in the shop, and when I come back, I will know that my tires are filled up to the pressure that I set it at. Welcome back to the Build for Off-Road shop, where we are once again working on our FJ45 project. Now, today we're focusing on the front suspension. We're using a bunch of off-the-shelf Tacoma parts. So we have a heavy-duty lower arm, our custom billet upper arm, and then a portal that's basically going to give us extra gear reduction and extra lift height in the suspension, give us a whole bunch of wheel travel, even though we're using stock length arms. Even though we have all these awesome parts in the front of this truck, there is still one problem area in the Tacoma, and that is normally what we'd be doing right now is bolting in an incredibly small and incredibly weak steering rack that would bolt down to the frame right here, and some tiny little tie rods would go through these openings in the frame and attach to our knuckles. But because we've gone this far with building a custom vehicle, there is another option out there. And what we're gonna do is use a pile of parts that are used normally in a more conventional type of steering system. We're gonna use a steering gear, pitman arm, ram assist ram, and a whole bunch of other parts to create what's called a swing set steering kit. So essentially, it's like a trophy truck style steering. And it all starts with this box being mocked up into place, and then we're gonna fire up the plasma cutter and cut out a whole bunch of steel. This is where our swing set's gonna go. Baller. Awesome, perfect, good. Thank you, Pierre. Now, if you're gonna build your own swing set steering setup, one thing you need to pay attention to is how you're going to pivot the shackles that are basically gonna support the swing set between it and the new cross member that we're gonna mount into the chassis. Now, although we're just using 1 3/4 DOM, you don't want to just use a poly mount in here. What I'm actually gonna do is I have this high quality, dense, basically it's called oiled bronze. So this is basically like a brass bushing that's impregnated with oil. So I'll have it machined down to fit inside this bushing, and they'll basically become the pivot point in the system. These will not wear out like a poly bushing would do, and that just gives you a lot longer life because this steering is gonna see a lot of load. You gotta remember, it's gonna be moving every time you turn the steering wheel. So if you just put a leaf spring bushing or something there, it's just gonna wear out probably in the first 100 miles. The next thing you need to pay attention to are the bolts that you're gonna use. So if you just grab a couple of grade 8 bolts out of your bolt bin and drop them into place, you may think that this might be the right bolt to use because of the fact that it basically fits all the way through and there's threads showing on the other side. But in reality, what you wanted to use is a bolt that's a lot longer because we want to do what's called shanking the bolt. Now, shanking the bolt means that we want the entire pivot structure in this steering system to be on the shank or the strongest part of the bolt. We don't want the threads to be inside the pivot point because that can become a weak point. This is honestly, ideally what you should do on every single piece of suspension on an off-road vehicle and steering. You should always make sure that you basically get the bolt with the correct amount of shank. So basically the entire system is supported on the shank, and then you would trim the bolt on the end to make it the right length. Now, the other option you could do is instead of basically cutting down a bunch of bolts is you can get a hold of a company like ARP and they can custom build bolts for you. So once you've figured out the size of the bolt that you need, you can call them and say, this is the length I need, this is the shank I need, this is the head I want, this is how much threads I want, and they will build the bolt for your system. ARP bolts are all 100% made in the USA. They're made of the highest quality steel. They are through hardened, not case hardened, so they're incredibly strong. And the nice thing is all of the threads and the finish is done after heat treat. So you don't have to worry about having any weak points inside the bolt because all of the machining is done after it's fully heat treated. The other nice thing is the stainless bolts, they don't just look good, they're incredibly strong. Their stainless bolts are stronger than a standard grade 8 bolt. So if you're working in a situation where you're worried about rust on the bolts, go ahead and have them build you a custom stainless bolt, and that way you'll have the strength and the good looks. While I finish up this steering, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll show you how to add ram assist to a swing set steering kit, and then we're gonna tear into our front diff. Welcome back to the shop. We're just finishing up working on our custom swing set steering setup on the front of our FJ45. Now, the best benefit is that because this swing set moves back and forth, we can add cylinder assist steering. We'll just basically tab the cylinder off the frame, a couple tabs on the top of this back half of the swing set, and we get the benefit of having the cylinder assist steering in basically a steering system designed for an independent front suspension. The beauty of having this whole system compressed like this is the lines are incredibly short from the steering gear down to the cylinder. And for this project, I'm going to be using a set of lines that we probably haven't shown you before. Now, we talk all the time about the benefit of the Crown Performance brake line. The fact that it's got a multi-layered design, resists swelling, has a Kevlar reinforcement inside, and it has one-piece fittings, and you can order them for pretty much any application and any length. But Crown does not just make brake lines. Crown Performance pretty much specializes in any type of fluid transfer line. So I called them up and said, hey, I need some short -6 smoke fully braided lines, and that way I can have these super cool, super strong lines that'll just come off the steering gear, go down to the steering ram, and then it'll be nice and tight. I don't have to worry about any failures because they're not a big line, they won't be in the way. And the best part is just like the Crown Performance brake lines, they're good and strong, and they'll last essentially forever. Bam. With our steering taken care of, we can now focus on the drivetrain. We're going to start right here with the front differential. Now, this front differential is a Toyota front IFS clamshell differential, but it's not out of a Tacoma to match our frame. Popular upgrade for the Tacoma is actually to upgrade it to this particular package, and that is the manual transmission FJ Cruiser differential, because the automatic FJ Cruisers and all of the Tacomas, they had what's called a center axle disconnect located right here. That meant there was a small electric motor that engaged and disengaged this axle to give you less load on the front end. So if you can find one of these manual transmission front clamshell differentials, the nice thing is you don't have that disconnect. You have a one-piece axle shaft, gives you a little bit extra strength. And since this is a hardcore off-road rig, I don't want that front axle disconnect at all. Now we're gonna be upgrading this front end with a set of 4.30 to 1 gears in the front and an air locker to allow me to select and unselect whether or not this differential is locked. The reason we're using the 4.3 to 1 gear ratio is because our portals have a gear ratio of 1.22. And if you do the math on that, that means by putting a 430 in the front with the 122 at the wheel of the portals, I can put a 529 in the back, and the gear ratio is the exact same on all 4 corners. Give me a pry bar, would you, Mikey? Criminal record says it broken twice. With the differential completely rebuilt, I can essentially prep it to basically install it back in the frame, slide the axle shafts in it, and fill it with fluid. But one thing that I'm going to be running in all of the areas of this truck that take fluid, either engine oil, transmission oil, or inside this differential, is the Hot Shots Secrets FR3 friction reducer. Now, this is a proprietary nanotechnology friction reducing compound that essentially embeds into the surface of any metal part. And it's designed to essentially eliminate the friction between that metal to metal on contact. Now, because you're eliminating that friction or reducing it, what it does is it starts to drop the oil temperatures in things like differentials, transmissions, engines, or rear axles by allowing basically the fluid to be a little bit slipperier and therefore not have that friction buildup and therefore excessive heat. And it doesn't take a lot. You add 1.5 ounces per quart of fluid per application. So in this front differential, probably takes about 2 quarts of fluid. So we'll add in 3 ounces of our friction reducer, and it should help keep our axle temperatures in check. So at this point, our front suspension is completely done. We now know where the rear suspension needs to sit on this truck. The next time we work on this project, we'll be working on getting the drivetrain set into place, and I've got something really cool and Toyota specific picked out for this rig. What's better than body swapping a classic C10 cab onto a modern chassis with long travel? How about full race-ready suspension with coilovers and bypasses up front, long travel leaves and bypasses out back, and then cap it all off with twin turbos. That means 2.
Sometimes you start a project and honestly, you just forget you even have it. That's exactly what happened with this pickup truck here. I had this great idea in my head that I was gonna take this pickup. This is like a 2004 long bed Chevy Silverado, and my idea was to skin it with one of my favorite trucks ever, and that is a classic 60s C10. So I bought a classic C10 just for the body, and then I started working on this thing, threw some suspension on it here and there, and then honestly, other stuff got in the way, so I just pushed it out here behind the shop. Well, right now, the plan is to drag this back in and continue on with this truck. So we'll continue stripping it down, then we'll prep our C10 body to put on it. And plus, this time we now finally have some good, cool suspension parts to throw at it. And then I also have something pretty cool to go with that engine, even though that's not the engine I plan to use, but it's gonna be like that. So we're gonna use that one for mock-up. There's some weeds in the way, but we'll just pull it right out of there. That's what we'll do. Now, the whole plan for this truck from the very beginning was to essentially reskin this 04 Silverado with that classic C10 pickup truck. And this is the bedside off the back of that truck. And you can see it actually fits this modern Silverado bedside pretty good. We basically just cut the outer bed skin off, dropped this one into place. Needs a little bit of tweaking, but it's close. Now, originally my thought process was, well, maybe I could do the exact same thing with the truck cab. That's why I left the radiator support on it for so long and just left it alone. The plan was maybe cut this cab down the rockers, take the classic C10 cab, cut it down the rockers, and drop it down into place. But now that I've had the vehicle around for quite some time, it's not worth it. It's not gonna work. Nothing's gonna line up. The truck's gonna look stupid if it has this modern plastic dash in it anyway. So the plan right now is to just fully embrace this rat rod style. We're gonna unbolt the truck cab from the frame, lift it off, get it out of here, and we'll essentially bring the classic C10 body and just set it down into place, and then we'll make it match the bed. Now, the reason that we're using the frame from this truck all revolves around this suspension that we've installed previously. Now, this is a long travel suspension system that was already basically mocked up on this chassis when I started this project. Now, it's a longer lower A-arm and a longer upper A-arm, gives us more travel in the front, and then out back, it's a set of long travel leaves and boomerang shackles. This is all designed to give us a whole bunch of wheel travel. Now, yes, it is two-wheel drive, but that's okay. We're kind of building like a classic looking pre-runner kind of truck here. That's what we're after. The only issue that we had with the suspension when we put it together was that I didn't have shocks because there was a huge lead time on shocks when we first mocked this up. So that's why it kind of ended up just stuffed out back in the weeds. But now we have shocks, but I don't want to bolt shocks up to this chassis that's got all this like surface rust on it. So the plan right now will basically be to blow this apart, at least enough where we can clean this up, finish up some of these welds, go ahead, give it a good coat of rust preventative paint, and then maybe a little flash of flat black, and then we can throw some shocks on it. I don't necessarily have to grind it completely back to bare metal to coat it. I'm actually gonna spray it with this Seymour rust converter. Now, what it is designed to do is it basically locks down the rust, prevents it from continuing to rust, and basically converts it from an active agent on the metal into an inactive agent. So we'll just go ahead and spray this entire frame rail. That'll black it all out, and then we don't have to worry about it in the future, and then we can start assembling the suspension for good. There we go. Now, I mentioned that we were waiting for the shocks for this truck, and that's because I had a very specific shock package chosen, and that is a coil carrier and a multi-tube bypass. But what makes these Fox shocks very special is they actually came from Shock Therapy. Now, the thing about Shock Therapy is they use their 30 years of experience in tuning and customizing shocks for specific applications, and they can basically build you a shock package for your vehicle. They kind of specialize in like ready to bolt on shock packages. So if you had like a Ford Raptor and you're looking for an upgrade or even just a rebuild, you can get a hold of them and they can either rebuild your shock or revalve your shock to meet the performance needs that you want for that specific truck.
They do a lot in the side-by-side and UTV market, but they also specialized in custom shocks like this. I simply told them what the truck was or is actually going to be, what application I was going to be using, and the links and the types of shocks that was going to be installed, as well as the suspension system that I already have on this truck. And they were able to take all that information and put together a shock package that should work very good for me right out of the box. Now, for this specific application, Shock Therapy sent me a coilover shock, which is essentially a coil carrier. There's a light amount of valving in this. This has a 7/8 inch shaft. It has 10 inches of travel, spherical rod ends at either end, and an external reservoir. And they've matched that with a Fox 3-tube 10-inch travel bypass shock. Now, the bypass shock allows us to adjust our suspension when we're in the field because we can change how the fluid travels through the valving inside the shock by adjusting the actual valves in the bypass tubes for compression or rebound, allowing that fluid to essentially bypass the piston inside the shock. That's why it's called that. Now, the nice thing about dealing with Shock Therapy is not only do I get a set of shocks straight out of the gate, but because I have these Fox shocks specific to this application, in the future, if I ever need any additional tuning out in the field, if I take this truck to an event where Fox is offering some tuning at, they will help me with tuning on this vehicle. It's just one of the benefits and after purchase support that Fox offers for people who buy shocks that are this good. Which one do I want to install first? This one. Oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks good. Oh, yeah. Whenever you build a vehicle like our body swap C10 here, this is a car you're obviously not going to drive every single day. So it's always a good idea to plan ahead to take care of the fuel in the vehicle when you're not using it. And that's when a product like Bardol's multi-engine advanced fuel additive comes into play. Now, this is not just something that you would dump in the fuel tank to prevent any moisture buildup inside the tank. This is an actual advanced fuel system treatment. It'll treat the entire fuel system throughout the engine and improve the fuel mileage of the vehicle, as well as lubricate the top end of the engine and prevent any rust buildup inside that fuel system in your car. Now, it's not just for cars. It works in any engine, whether it's 4-cycle, 2-cycle, gas, diesel, ethanol. You can pretty much use it in anything from your lawnmower to your race truck to your tow rig, and that way you know your fuel will always be in good shape when you turn that key. Welcome back to the shop where we're body swapping a classic C10 onto an 04 Chevy Silverado long bed two-wheel drive pickup. Now, we've ditched the cab, and the whole plan here is to basically transplant the cab from the C10 onto the back, but I wanted to keep the modern bed for a couple reasons. Number one, the old bed on my classic Chevy was rotten. And number two, I like the look of the new bed on the back of the truck. It also gives me the option to use other accessories in the future. But I'm not just gonna leave the bed just in bare blue paint because it's not in very good shape. Plus, we have some work we have to do to it. I am gonna eventually coat it with the new Seymour 2K protective coating kit. Now, this is a little bit different than the other DIY bed liners out there. So if you were to think of the majority of your do-it-yourself bed lining kits, those are what is referred to as a urethane product. Then when you go to like a professional bed liner spray place, that's a polyurea. This is essentially a bridge between those two options. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you want an incredibly strong truck bed coating, this is what you got. If you're a shop, maybe you're a body shop and you want to basically not invest heavily in a full bed lining system, you could use this and get that same quality bed liner protective coating in the back of the bed or maybe underneath the vehicle and end up being able just to use it with a standard Schutz gun in your shop. How strong is it? Well, we got one of the competitor products right here. This is a standard one that I was talking about before. It's a urethane. So if you simply take the screwdriver and scratch it, you can see it's not going right down to the bare, well, actually it did go right down to the bare aluminum right there. This is the Seymour 2K kit right here. I take the screwdriver and try to dig it in. It does not peel off. It also has a more slip-resistant finish. If you look over here on this one, I slide, my hand goes straight across it. If I try to do the same on this one, just light pressure, and it moves it across the bed. What we're gonna do to demonstrate this is I have the tailgate that's gonna eventually go on this truck. We're gonna prep it, spray it, and then eventually I'll spray the bed in the back of our pickup. If we're applying this protective coating over an OE painted finish, we'd use a fibrous cup brush to prep the surface, but since this is an old 1960s tailgate, I'm gonna go at it with a wire wheel on an angle grinder to knock down all this flaky rust and get rid of it. We'll then take 8 ounces of part B, mix it into part A, put the cap back on and shake it. You just simply need to follow the instructions that are on the box for the amount of agitation that's needed. That allows all of it to mix together, and this actually is honestly what sets the texture. Then we hook it up to the Schutz gun and lay down 2 heavy coats. So at this point, we have protected the truck bed, or in this case, the tailgate, with our 2 coats, but now we want to apply what's called a drop coat, and the drop coat is what's going to give it the texture. Now, to get the drop coat, mixing is still the same. We're basically going to mix the part B into the part A, but we're going to shake it for a shorter period of time. That's going to allow the droplets to basically suspend inside the mixture a little bit looser, and then we're going to hold the gun back, and we're just going to find a texture that we're happy with, and then we're just gonna repeat that over the whole panel, and that is gonna give us the finish that we are after. You can plan to cover a standard 6.5-foot truck bed with one of the 2K protective coating kits. Bigger beds, obviously you're gonna need more, and there's no recoat window in this. So in the future, if I need to touch this up or just refresh it, I can just come back and spray right over top of this with another coat of the protective coating.
That looks pretty good to me.
Now, before I coat our factory bed on the inside, I do need to make some modifications. And the modifications are all going to revolve around fitting this monster 16-inch travel 3-tube bypass that Shock Therapy spec'd out for us to match our front suspension. This is designed to get us essentially 16 inches of wheel travel in the back of this truck, which is absolutely awesome. But that shock has to come through this inner fender well and attach to a bed cage. That, huh? Inside the bed. And because we have to make those modifications, that's why we're waiting until we bed line the inside. We'll lose this inner fender well, we'll start mocking up our bed cage. We'll put the shock in and then we'll see what it looks like. That's pretty much about it. Now that we know where the shocks are gonna live, we can use a hole saw to cut a hole through the bed. One hole for each shock, and after the suspension mock-up is complete, we'll continue moving the cab over from our donor C10. 2 holes. So now that our frame is fully prepped with our suspension, it's time to start harvesting the rest of the parts off of this donor C10. The tree makes it heavy. Now this literally was dragged out of a field and we're only after a few key parts and we're keeping this beautiful patina on everything. So now we'll go ahead, get the front end off, get the cab off, and get that bedside off, and then we'll get our frame back in here, set it all in, mock it up, see what it looks like. I thought this was gonna be the hard part. So with the cab now on the frame, the first thing that actually blows my mind, we took some measurements before we started this project, but we always talk about trucks, they're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But here's a 1960 Chevrolet C10 sitting on this frame, and it basically lines up with the truck bed almost perfectly. It's like it's the same width. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, considering these trucks are essentially 50 years apart from being built. Now, the cab is obviously just mocked up into place. You have to play with the bedside height, but that's okay. That's why I never welded it on. I think I'm actually gonna have to drop the bedsides down a little bit to line up with the cab, but I like where everything's sitting. There's lots of room around here. Now, one thing you're probably wondering is, this suspension system has a bar that basically ties these 2 shock hoops together, and I never installed it. And the reason I never installed it is because there's one more thing that I want to do to this truck that I honestly think is just gonna make it that much cooler. And it all revolves around, this is our mock-up engine, not the real engine, but we're gonna build off it. I'm gonna show you what that is in a second. So if you're gonna body swap a classic C10 onto a long travel two-wheel drive pre-runner, why not go ahead and add twin turbos to make it even cooler? So this is one of these super cheap online twin turbo kits that everyone talks about. They often refer to them as engine eaters because they're really just like literally, I think it was 500 bucks for this whole kit, 2 headers and 2 turbos. And when we actually build the motor, we'll tune it to fit. But the reason that I want to put these on right now is because this is the first step, obviously, in our exhaust. And we want to make sure we get all of this mocked up before we get the body locked down in case we have to make a few changes. But I got to say, that, I mean, come on, that's cool. It's 2 turbos. 2 turbos. Old truck, long travel. With the shape that my C10 cab is in, I'm obviously going to be doing some sheet metal work. Not so much on the outside of the truck, because as we said before, I really like the patina, but I'm probably going to be building some floor patches. And floors in classic trucks usually involve a lot of complex shapes. That's why I wanted to go ahead and set up this tool right here. This is my new Woodward Fab throatless rotary shear. Now it's designed with this ratcheting handle to basically allow you to manipulate the sheet metal as you work it through the shear, and just allows you to cut complex shapes out of the shear and then basically get those weird shapes that you need to cut. It's very, very easy to do. And because of its throatless design, it allows you to cut inside curves as well as outside curves very easily. But when you need to cut a straight piece, you can use this little guide, basically locks the steel in place. I know that this is going to be used a lot as we work our patch panels into this truck. Today in the shop, we're basically creating a one-of-a-kind C10 pickup truck, and if there's ever been a vehicle that I have owned that I want exhaust cutouts on, it's going to be this one right here. Now, exhaust cutouts usually basically just take a piece of pipe, you cut it out, and you put this little cutout on it with an electronic valve. But there is a better option, and that is a valved exhaust system or a valved muffler from Valvetronic Designs. Now, the way that this exhaust system works is it essentially is designed to replace the muffler in your exhaust. And then you have this small electronic box that's mounted inside the car, so all the electronics are nice and safe inside. And then there is a pneumatic or basically vacuum actuated motor mounted to the muffler. The way it works is when the valve is closed, the exhaust gas is going to come into the muffler, going to go through the stainless chamber and out through the back. But when you want to have that nice, loud, throaty exhaust, you simply hit the button on your remote. The electronics will activate a small vacuum pump. These small vacuum lines run down to this valve, and it will open up the valve that is inside this pipe. And therefore, your exhaust gases are now bypassing this stainless chambered muffler and exiting right out the back. It's perfect for when you really want that loud exhaust sound, but sometimes you don't. Maybe you're driving your classic C10 swapped pre-runner back into the campground late at night. You don't want to wake up everybody. You'd simply shut it down and keep it nice and quiet. But when it's time to go out and tear up the dunes, you're going to open it up and let it breathe. The exhaust on our C10 essentially is going to start at the turb skis, travel down on top of the motor, kick down and go underneath the rocker panels, because this is not a rock crawler. So the nice thing is I'll be able to mount these mufflers just on the side underneath the truck. They're not going to be in the rocks with this vehicle. So they're going to be cool. You'll be able to see them. Be lots of fun. Now, whenever you're working with stainless, there's a few things that you need to keep track of. So number one, obviously, you're going to need a TIG welder. So in this case here, I'm using my Rebel AC/DC. Now, this is a multi-process machine. So this is MIG, TIG, stick. This particular version is the AC/DC, so I can do AC TIG and DC TIG. So to weld your stainless exhaust, you're going to be operating in DC TIG. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get one of these oversized cups. Now, this oversized cup, I believe, is a 16, I think is what this one is. Now, what that will do is it'll just improve the gas coverage while I am welding. Another thing you can get is a back purge system. So in essence, what we're going to do is we would fill this pipe with argon out of the cylinder. And this is what I use for back purging. This is just an extra line. This actually screws into the O2 sensor in the exhaust and has just a little quick connect fitting to connect it. It also acts as a heat sink
when you're welding in the bungs for the O2 sensor so they don't get overheated and distorted. The most important thing I can teach you about welding stainless is to make sure that you focus on your arc length. You want to keep the tip of your tungsten incredibly sharp, and you're going to want to keep it very close to the weld, almost just touching the weld puddle. If you do that, you'll end up with those really nice sort of like rainbow colors like you see on our exhaust from Valvetronic Designs right here. You keep it nice and close like that, won't contaminate, won't gray out, and give you the look that you want. When you're building exhaust, you don't necessarily have to add a bunch of filler rod because we're not really building a structural weld here. We're just trying to seal up the exhaust so the exhaust doesn't get out. So if your gaps are good enough, you should just be able to what's called fusion weld the exhaust. That basically means just making a puddle and basically melting, in this case, the V-band into the pipe, and that'll work just fine. Before doing any stainless welding, you want to clean the joint with a little bit of acetone. I like to use acetone and some Scotch-Brite, just to make sure it's good and clean.
This build for off-road welding tip of the trade is brought to you by ESAB.
So what started today as literally a pickup truck that I had basically abandoned in the weeds, it has completely changed its appearance. I absolutely love the look of this classic C10 cab sitting on this long travel pre-runner frame, and then the wild idea to throw twin turbos at it at the last minute means that this thing is just going to be even crazier. Now obviously we are not done, we're just mocking everything up. The next time we'll work on this truck, I think we might be trying to get that engine running, and it's going to be loud. Today, our fab table is empty, and that is because our FJ45 project is finally off of it. I'll show you what engine we're stuffing in this beast, and it gets to sit on its tires and wheels for the very first time. Today, we brought the FJ45 project back into the shop. Now, this thing's been living on the fab table for a while as we've been building things like custom suspension and getting our Toyota Tacoma front frame clip mocked into place. Now, today, I want to get this thing off of the fab table, sitting on the ground, all 4 tires and wheels, so we can get an engine mocked up inside this chassis. Now, there's still a bunch of work that we have to do to this frame before it can come off the fab table, because right now it's basically being held together with a bunch of clamps and a few tack welds. So we're going to start at the back of the truck, work our way forward. Bed comes off. I can't do that alone. Where's Pierre and his brother Michael? Let's stand it on its end, so set your end down. That way it takes up less space. Now we get the hammer. Now, if you remember, the entire back half of this frame is built out of this 2x3 3/16 wall structural steel. And we did this kick out here to make room for our coilover and bypass shock that are going to mount off this trailing arm. Now, whenever you're working with this type of material and you're building basically a box frame, when you've got just butt joints like this, you can't leave them. We did a fish plate down here on the side, and that's going to strengthen up that. But we need to run one to cover up these open sections. So essentially what I need to do now is make a fish plate that comes down, bends, wraps around here. I need to do one that comes down here, bends here, and then I'm gonna do one that comes down this side and wraps all the way around the corner. That will basically strengthen up the joint because now it's bridging it across both pieces of tube, and it also covers up this open section of tube, which you don't want, especially in an off-road vehicle. A bunch of dirt, mud, rocks gonna end up in there, cause it to rust. So we'll go over to the plasma table, cut all those out, and then we'll bend them and weld them on. Go. We'll put a nut on that one.
What I'm doing right now is finishing up the rear suspension so I can build some shock mounts, and I do need to move this axle up a little bit and probably clearance the center cross member, so I need to have all the control arms in place to do that. Now, to build out these control arms, I'm using rod end supply rod ends. I use rod end supply rod ends in pretty much all of my projects because they're available in many different sizes. They have like from 10/32 all the way up to a 2-inch rod end available in their inventory. These are 1.25" rod ends, so what that means is that the shank of the rod end is 1.25" and the uniball has a 1-inch hole in it, but we're using misalignment spacers to step that down. The nice thing about the rod end supply rod ends is they use nylon fiber as a lubricant instead of PTFE. Now, the PTFE or Teflon that you see in a lot of rod ends, that's where you see that just black edges on the side of the center ball, that can get loose over time and actually can separate from the rod end and basically come out. And then the rod end is basically knocking around inside. The nylon fiber is injected in place. It fully encapsulates this center ball and it does not wear out. So you don't need to lubricate these or clean these, or pretty much these are lifetime rod ends. The rod ends themselves, they're heat treated 4130 chrome moly, and they basically come as a package. You can buy each individual piece, or you can get, as I got here, with a rod end, jam nut, misalignment spacers, and tube adapters all in one shot. So now that we have these upper control arms mounted, I'll lock in my lower links, and then we can move this rear axle. Oh, yeah. There you go. They'll live there while we cut some tube. Now, the rear shock mount in this truck, it's actually not that complicated. It's just a whole bunch of pieces for it. So we have these upper plates here. This is basically obviously going to capture our bypass shock as well as our coil carrier. And then I'm just going to run a piece of tube down from here down to this part of the frame, from here down to this part of the frame. And I added a little bump out on the inside, and we'll take a piece of tube off there down to this part of the frame. And that's all it takes for this upper shock mount. I'll duplicate it on the other side. Things you need to watch out for when you're doing stuff like this. You want to make sure that the shocks fully compress at the same time. That way you get the most amount of travel out of them. Remember, there's going to be springs on the coil carrier, so make sure there's lots of room around it. And make sure that everything's not going to contact as the suspension cycles. That's why I've got this big kick out in here. Boom. So far with our FJ45 project, we really haven't been sparing any expense when it comes to what's going in this thing. I mean, we got portals on the front and trailing arms on the back and thousands of shocks going on all four corners. So when it came to the engine, part of me wanted to put like a little Toyota V6 underneath the hood because I thought, you know, that might be kind of cool. But then another part of me realized that this would be a much better choice. So this is a 6.2 liter, we call it an LS, but it's an L99 all aluminum truck motor. Well, actually, this is actually a Camaro motor, but this particular version of this LS was available in tons of different vehicles made by General Motors from like 2010 to, I believe, 2014. It hovers right around like 400 horsepower. It's got gobs of torque. They're stupid reliable. They run cool. They idle well. There's no real fancy issues with them when you got them on the trail. They're just really, really reliable, and they have a whole bunch of power. Behind it, 6-speed automatic transmissions. That's going to be super cool. And then we're actually going to feed that just into the Jeep transfer case. Now, this one actually came from a local recycling yard, and it came out of a 2010 Chevrolet Camaro. So they left a lot of stuff on here for me, like extra wires and hoses and things that we're going to remove, basically clean up to prep this engine before we can start mocking it up inside our truck. So we'll take all that stuff off. Come on, get off of there. Okay. Put that over there. Now, there's lots of ways to control an LS engine like this in your project, but when it comes to an off-road vehicle, in my opinion, the #1 thing you're after is honestly just reliability. And you cannot get more reliable than a factory computer because it's designed from the factory to just be abused all the time whenever someone owns it. But the hard part is getting a factory computer to work in a custom hot rod application like this. The best way to do that
is with a Hotwire Auto harness and computer package. I have one of their harnesses probably in 4 or 5 of my rigs, and I absolutely love them. They're always easy to install. They start every time, and they basically run like the motor is sitting underneath the hood of a stock vehicle, even though it's in either a Jeep or a rock buggy, or in this case, an FJ45. It starts with one of their complete hot rod harnesses. So this is an all new wiring harness. So it's not junkyard connectors. These are all brand new connectors that hook up back to your motor, and it's all labeled so it's easy to hook up, and it's designed for that hot rod hookup. So minimal hookups underneath the dash. So keyed power on, main power on, ground, just a couple of things. And then you have feeds that feed up underneath your dash for things like tachometer and other gauges that you'd have. You get a new fuse box that goes inside the car as well as the computer, and it's all fed through a firewall grommet that keeps the weather out. And the best thing is it's super easy to hook up, but if you don't know how to hook it up, they offer tech support. You can just call them up. They'll answer any question that you have. And like I said before, you have that factory ECU. So somewhere in this pile of wires right here, you got what's called the assembly line diagnostic link, or ALDL connector, sometimes referred to as the OBD2 connector. So if anything happens with the motor, you can plug a common scan tool into it, pull any codes out of the computer to diagnose why the engine might not be starting. That's the best of both worlds. You get the reliability of the OE plus the hot rod style from this harness. Gonna make that engine run right underneath there. So I'm gonna drill a great big hole in the firewall. There. Look at that. It's like an OE install. Once the harness is routed inside, my plan is to keep the fuse block up inside the glove box. I'll mount the computer up underneath the glove box so it's pointing down. I'll have to route those wires through the glove box. Then you have 2 harnesses that come over to the driver's side. You have your OBD2 port or ALDL connector. I usually connect that underneath the dash. And then you have your connection for your drive-by-wire throttle pedal, because this engine does not have a cable connecting the throttle pedal up to the throttle body. It's all electronic. So what Hotwire does, they turn off the displacement on demand programming inside the computer. That way the lifters always stay fully charged with oil and they won't turn in their bores and wipe out the cam. Gives me lots of power in the engine, prevents that common failure. That's gonna mount right there. Roll the table out. So now that the frame has been fully gusseted and it can come off the frame table, the cab still isn't mounted, and that's because we want to get the engine and transmission mocked up into place, because we may have to cheat this cab back and forth just a little bit, fine-tune it. But right now, considering we started with just a pile of steel and a front clip from a junkyard, this thing looking good. Engine time. Oh, there's a truck there. That's really low. Now with the motor in the chassis, I'm super happy with how everything is looking, because number one, the nice thing about having an IFS vehicle is I don't need to worry about the front drive shaft moving. It basically comes from the transfer case, it's going to the front diff. It doesn't go travel up and down with the suspension. So I can leave the factory oil cooler on this motor. There's plenty of room for the drive shaft. The motor's sitting nice and low in the chassis. This body actually is gonna come up another 1.5 inches when I put the actual body mounts on it. So we've got plenty of room there. The only issue we're gonna have is the tunnel inside for the transfer case. It's not gonna be big enough, but I can remake the transmission tunnel. This body, the transmission tunnel, is completely removable. And I kind of knew that was gonna happen. That's why we only coated half the floor. I knew I was gonna be cutting it up and having to do some welding. But right now, I'm gonna build some mounts off the frame. We've got these little motor mounts that are designed for the LS engine. They just have these one little rubber isolator that sits underneath it. Drop a bolt down through. We'll build a tab off the frame right here, gusset it off the bottom.
Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. Motors in your truck. Plasma table. I tacked these mounts into place using my ESAB Rebel welder. Now, the Rebel is a multi-process machine, and that is a great option for your shop, and here's why. For today's welding tip, I'm gonna answer probably one of the most asked questions I get asked about welding, and that is, I'm looking to buy my first welder, what should I get? Well, the reality is the first thing you have to decide is what type of welding are you doing? And are you just gonna be working with steel and sheet metal, or do you want to have a machine that's gonna be able to tackle any welding job that you have in your shop? Now, when it comes to tools, I sort of subscribe to that classic saying where it's buy once, cry once. So yes, a true multi-process welder like this ESAB Rebel is gonna cost you a little bit more money, but it's gonna possibly be the last welder you ever buy for your shop. And that is because this one machine is capable of performing MIG welding with both solid or flux core wire. So you might not need gas. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. You can TIG weld with it. This particular model, I can do AC or DC TIG. That means I'm able to weld steel, stainless steel, as well as aluminum. And it is also a stick welder where I can use it to weld just basically heavy, thick material with a arc welding rod with this stinger. That is possibly the best reason to get a multi-process machine. It's one machine, takes up a very small footprint in your shop, and you can do a whole bunch of different types of welding. And I'm gonna show you all of them right now. We'll start with the MIG welder. MIG welding stands for metal inert gas welding, and it's a type of arc welding. So essentially what happens is we're inducing voltage onto this little wire that's coming out of the MIG welding gun, and when this wire touches the workpiece, we're creating an arc that's melting the material, and the machine feeds the filler wire from inside down through the gun to create the bead. The items you need to watch out for when you're MIG welding are you need to pay attention to how far away the torch is from the workpiece. So you want to keep about 3/8 to a 1/4 inch gap. That will give you good weld coverage with the gas that's coming out of the nozzle. You also want to make sure that the nozzle and the welding tip are in good condition because they can wear out over time. This is the easiest form of welding to learn. If you're just buying your first welder, MIG is where you're going to start, and this machine is a great way to do it. Now, let's look at TIG welding. TIG welding stands for tungsten inert gas welding. It's another form of arc welding. Now, the difference here is what we're doing is we are completing an electrical circuit from the end of this piece of tungsten between it and the workpiece. That's what creates the arc, causes the metal to melt. And then with our other hand, we're adding filler material into the molten puddle as we push the molten puddle along with the torch. At the same time, we're controlling the amount of amperage that's coming out of the welder with the foot pedal that's being run by my right foot. The beauty of TIG welding is it's a very precise form of welding because I have full control over the molten puddle. I can use my foot to make it larger or smaller. I can manipulate it with a torch, and then I control how much filler material I'm adding at a time with my other hand. It's a very difficult process to learn. It's time consuming. People who spend all day TIG welding are essentially welding artists. Their welds look absolutely beautiful. Now, the last process we're gonna look at is good old fashioned stick welding. Stick welding is kind of the original form of arc welding. Essentially what we're doing is we're inducing a voltage into this arc rod. These rods come in many different types of material, depending on what you're welding. It's specialized steel that's covered in this flux. The flux melts as we weld or create the molten puddle down the piece of work, and the flux will protect the puddle, and then when you're done, you gotta chip it off to see the weld underneath. It's possibly one of the most difficult types of welding to master, but it does have its place. It's probably the most portable type of welding. You can get arc stingers and wire to feed them up to 100, 200, 300 feet long. So essentially the welder could stay in the shop and I could take a ground clamp and a stinger and be 100 feet away, and all I need to weld is the arc welding rod. I don't need any gas, I don't need any foot pedals, nothing else. Most of the time, this stinger, once you put the electrode into the stinger, the electrode is live, and that's what makes it tricky. So you'd set this down on the table, and quite often it would short out and start arcing. The nice thing about this machine is it actually incorporates an on-off switch, so I can turn the stinger off and on, basically turn the knob, now it's live, I'm ready to weld. When I'm done welding, I just turn the knob back, it's off. That way I can set it down on the work table and it doesn't cause any arcs. One thing you do need to pay attention to when you stick weld is you wanna make sure you're actually wearing a good piece of fire-resistant clothing, because there's a lot of sparks that come off the arc stinger as well as you're welding. It's always good to wear the proper clothing when you're welding. And that's all you need to know. A multi-process machine is a great welder if you're shopping for your first welder. Takes up very small amount of footprint in the shop, and we can do all this type of welding whenever you need it. Then, just practice and do it a lot.
This Build for Off-Road Welding Tip of the Trade is brought to you by ESAB.
Something that I like to keep around the shop at all times are a couple packages of JB Weld Original Twin Tube Epoxy. Now, this is the do anything, fix anything epoxy. You can use it on wood, metal, plastic, fiberglass. I've even used this to fix a pinhole that I had in a jerry can that had rusted out from just sitting around the shop because I wanted to use it as a filler neck on another project. It sealed it up and worked great. The Twin Tube Original, it is a long set epoxy. So I've set up a perfect example here of where you're gonna use it. This is a stripped out tensioner bolt on this LS water pump. You see someone tried to put the wrong bolt in the hole and it basically broke the ear off of this. And we want to fix it instead of buying a whole new water pump. So we'll mix up some of this twin tube, we'll apply it, stick this piece back on, and actually I'll even fill the hole inside, because this stuff, once it's cured in the 24-hour period, it can be drilled, sanded, tapped, painted, anything you need. So we'll basically recreate this ear, and then once it's dry, we'll be able to drill it and tap it, and the water pump will be good as new. I'd say that's fixed. The plan today was to get the chassis off of the fab table and get this thing sitting on all 4 tires and wheels at full bump, and that's exactly what we did. We even got the engine mocked up into place with our 6-speed transmission, and we know where our engine harness and computer are gonna lie. Now, we just have a couple more things to do. I still have to clean up and get the swing set steering all taken care of now that the engine is in place, but right now, we're at a great spot. This truck is pretty much ready to tear apart, do some finish welding, and get this chassis coated. Here's the specs on this bad boy. We got a 116-inch wheelbase. At full bump, we have over 16 inches of ground clearance at the front crossmember, 19-inch belly. That means at ride height, it's gonna be about 23, 24 inches. This thing is gonna be perfect. And it looks pretty damn cool, too. Today, we've got our body swap C10 project back in the shop, and I'm gonna show you all the extra parts and pieces you're gonna need after you bought your super cheap twin turbo kit for your junkyard engine in order to make it run. And there's a lot of parts, a lot. Today in the shop, we've got our body swap Silverado back in here. Now, last time we got the cab in place and added this sweet, sweet twin turbo setup to our junkyard 5.3 engine that's underneath the hood. Now, today's show, it's gonna be a little bit different.
If you're like me and you got all excited and you bought this twin turbo kit online for right around 500 bucks, you might think that's all I need to get to twin turbo my motor. Well, much like myself, you would be wrong. So today we're gonna show you everything that you need to know and everything that you need to buy on top of this super cheap twin turbo kit to make this engine run with DOS turb skis under the hood. And it starts not even at the engine, way back here. That's the skid plate. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Come on out, Mr. Gas Tank. Now, the way a turbocharger works is it uses the exhaust gas that is leaving the engine to spin an impeller, and that spins another impeller that compresses the oxygen that's going into the engine. Now, since you've compressed the air before it enters into the combustion chamber, that means that there's more oxygen molecules inside the engine. Therefore, you can add more fuel, and that's where you make more power. The problem is when you put two turbos on any engine, that means you need more fuel. The factory fuel pump is not going to get enough fuel to add to the cylinder to make that extra power. So we need to upgrade our fuel pump a couple different ways. We could add an external fuel pump to act as what's called a booster pump to take the fuel that's leaving this fuel pump and add more pressure to it. But a better way is to just replace the entire in-tank module. This is an aftermarket in-tank module that has an upgraded 255 liters per hour fuel pump inside it. That is twice the capacity or output of the factory pump, which means we'll have all the fuel we need to run the engine. Plus, we're gonna adapt the fuel lines from these small factory lines over to a large dash 8, so that is 8 AN, so that is ½ inch feeding up to the engine, and then a dash 6, which is 3/8 return line coming back to the pump. So we get all the upgrades, but we still get to keep our factory tank. Just like the engine needs more fuel, your turbos need some oil. See, you have to remember, as the exhaust is spinning this impeller inside this turbocharger, there's a set of bearings right in the middle. And this impeller can spin between 80,000 and 350,000 rotations per minute, depending on the speed of the engine. So you need to get a lot of oil into that turbo. And if you have two turbos, you need to add 2 turbo oil feeds and drains. So you're gonna need a kit that's something like this. Basically, you're gonna end up with a fitting that's going to feed the turbo the oil and some type of high pressure braided line. Normally we tap into an oil port on the engine, probably gonna go into the oil pressure gauge port, which is way at the back of the engine because there's pressurized oil there. And then you gotta drain the oil down, so you end up with a drain fitting that goes on the bottom of the turbo, hose and some fittings that goes down, and you'll have to add some type of drain, usually into the oil pan. And for this kit, we actually have inside this little bag a little weld-on fitting. So what I'm gonna do is I actually have another oil pan that I'm gonna add the drain fittings to that I'll swap into this truck later on because that oil pan is greasy, oily, and dirty. I don't really feel like welding on it. And then we just have to add these fittings to the top of our turbos. There we go. Now we have an oil feed and an oil return for the turb skis. When you have a turbocharger on your motor, you need to be able to control the pressure that is built up inside of the engine somehow. Now, we're going to be using what's called a mechanical wastegate to do that. Now, the way that this works is it plumbs into the exhaust system before the exhaust enters the actual turbo. And what will happen inside of this is there's a spring inside of here, and at a certain pressure, that spring will open, and it will allow the exhaust to basically divert past the turbo. So in essence, if we mounted it down here, what would happen is instead of the exhaust going up into the turbo to spin it up, it would basically divert down and come out this other hole right here. But you add what's called a boost reference. So we're gonna run a small vacuum line from this fitting right here, and we're gonna tap into the turbo housing up here. That will help the valve open and prevent any possible overpressure. We need to weld a V-band clamp onto a piece of tubing, and then have that piece of tubing weld into that header, and drill a hole. Okay, all right, now I gotta drill and tap that, but I don't want any junk getting in there. When you're tapping something that you don't want the chips to end up in where it's going, if you coat the tap with wheel bearing grease, the little chips tend to stick to the wheel bearing grease. Now we take the tap, we dip it in the goo too, and then the hose go from here. At this point, the hot side of our turbo system is pretty much taken care of. Now, you do have a couple options when it comes to the outlet of the wastegate, because it can get pretty loud, because obviously it is now before the turbo, which sometimes acts as a little bit of a muffler, and before our muffler. Some people will plumb that outlet of the wastegate right into the exhaust before the muffler. But if you do that, I had a friend tell me that the best thing to do is use one of those flexible bellows when you do it, because of the different temperatures that are happening here, because the wastegate is cast and the header is stainless and the exhaust is stainless. The different temperatures at play, the expansion, contraction. If you just use a hard pipe, it tends to just basically crack over time with the cycling of the heat. My plan is pretty simple. I'm gonna throw an elbow on the back of this muffler. It's gonna kick out and come out the fender here, and I'm just gonna run another pipe all the way down here, right on top of it. So I have two pipes coming out both sides of the truck, because this side will match that side. So now we got to talk about the cold side. So the cold side of the turbo is essentially right here. So as we said before, the turbocharger is compressing that oxygen before it goes into the motor. Whenever you compress something, you add heat. So after the air leaves the turbo, you want to run it through what's called a heat exchanger or intercooler. Now there's a couple different kinds. There's an air to air and there's a water to air. We're going to use an air to air, so it just basically looks like a radiator. And what will essentially happen is the air will come out of the turbo through some boost tubes and into an intercooler that's going to sit somewhere in here. It's in a box over there. Get in your home. There we go. Oh, yeah. Woo-hoo. So we've kind of dealt with all the air side of the turbo. We've dealt with the hot side, we've dealt with the cold side, and now we're getting close to dealing with basically the brains of the operation of how to make a turbocharger engine actually work. Now, we've already dealt with the fuel pump to get more fuel for our engine, but anytime you take a whole bunch of compressed air and stab it inside a motor, you got to add more fuel. And actually, one of the most important parts of that is the injectors. Now, we're going to be using HP tuners to control this engine, and actually, we got something pretty cool coming from them, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later. But they suggested these injectors right here. These are 100 pound per hour, 1050 cc high flow injector, because what you don't want to have happen inside your engine after you've spent a whole bunch of money on turbos and all the extra stuff is at wide open throttle to be pushing a whole lot of air inside your motor and then have the injectors not be able to flow enough fuel, therefore leaning out the engine. And that's usually when the internals of the engine become externals, which is what you don't want. So that is why we're going to be upgrading to these injectors. And then at the same time, we're just going to be installing this new intake. We could have just used the truck intake that was on this motor, but I kind of like the look of this intake. I think it looks a lot cooler. And, you know, we've already done all of that, so why not do some of this? Oh, and we do have a bigger throttle body that is now a drive-by cable, but we'll talk about that more later on. Right now, I'm going to put these little injectors in these little holes. Injector.
This build for off-road welding tip of the trade is brought to you by ESAB.
For today's welding tip, we're going to be talking about portable welding. Now, I've talked to you before about the benefits of having a stick welder and being able to run out like 100 foot of lead to your arc stinger to weld on something like your trailer. But you don't have to always do that. You can get this right here. This is the ESAB Volt. This is the world's first welder that is designed to run off of rechargeable power tool batteries. This entire welder runs off of 4 of these flex volt batteries. So essentially what you can do is you can have 8 of these batteries, have 4 of them charging, pull out 4, put them in the welder, weld with the welder, and when the batteries go dead, 28 rods later, you can simply swap in 4 fresh batteries to keep welding. When you're not using it as a portable welder, it is a powerful arc machine that you can plug into the wall and use 220 volt power. What I'm gonna be doing today is showing you how I would use this in my shop. So here's the deal. I parked my trailer back here, and the last time I took it out, I ripped off my spare tire mount. So instead of hooking it up to the truck, pulling it all the way into the shop to work on it, I just grabbed my ESAB Volt. I'm gonna come back here, and I'm gonna fix that spare tire mount right here in the field. Literally the field. The highway's right there, I can hear it. There we go. And it's that easy to fix. You can imagine if I was out on the trail with this trailer and I had lost this spare tire mount, maybe in the parking lot or on the way there, I could fix it pretty much anywhere and keep this mount in place. Having a battery-powered welder in your fleet of tools is definitely a good option. So today we're showing you all of the extra things that you need to plan for after you've bought your super cheap twin turbo kit off of the internet. And so far we have all of our hot side plumbed, we're controlling our boost pressure with a wastegate, and we've got our intercooler planned out for the cold side, and we have our injectors in our intake. Now, we are gonna convert this engine over from the factory. This particular 5.3 was a electronic throttle body, and we're converting over to a drive-by cable. So there's gonna be an actual throttle cable that goes back into the passenger compartment. So we do need to add a couple sensors here. So we have an idle air control valve and a throttle position sensor. These are just some factory sensors. Now, because we are boosting this engine, the map sensor, we need to change over to the 3-bar map. This is the actual factory map sensor from the supercharged application of the LS engine. And we need to have this to measure the manifold absolute pressure, because now obviously it's going to be under pressure, not under vacuum. So this has to go in the back of the intake, and this will plug into the computer that's going to control this engine, and that is what we're going to look at next. But first, we'll put these in. Boom. Now, I teased you before about how I said we were going to control this engine using HP tuners, and normally that would mean that I'm sitting here with my laptop with maybe a cut-down factory harness and I'm reprogramming a stock ECU, but not this time. This is brand new from HP tuners. This is a Gen 3 LS standalone wiring harness, and they have a Gen 3 version and a Gen 4 version available right now. Now, the cool thing about this wiring harness is it has a lot of the similar features that you see on other standalone harnesses. So we have a fuse block that's going to go underneath the hood. We have all the connectors, connected ECU, firewall grommet, and then basically all the connectors that we would need to make our engine run: injectors, coils, water temperature sensor, stuff like that. But what makes this harness truly unique, in my opinion, is this. So if we look back here, this is the section of the harness that comes underneath the dash. Now we have the basically normal wires that we're gonna find. This is just basically for anything you're gonna have underneath your dash, you know, check engine light, keyed ignition, and a couple of gauges. But this bundle of wires right here is, in my opinion, what makes this harness super special. So the first one is this little Ethernet port right here. So you're gonna hook this up, mount it underneath your dash, and this is where we're gonna connect our laptop to talk to the ECU using the HP Tuner software. So we're not going in through an OBD2 port, we're actually using the HP Tuner software. How
anyone who's used it before has always used it in the past. Then there's this little connector right here. Now, this is an HP T-Net connector. Now, this is a proprietary HP tuners connector that's going to basically hook up to things in the future that are going to communicate with the ECU. And that's pretty standard when you're buying an aftermarket standalone harness. You're going to see connectors that are going to talk to that basically company's aftermarket pieces. But this is what makes it really cool. HP Tuners knows that if you're using HP Tuners, you're probably going to want to use some little extra things here and there. So these are 2 additional CAN bus communication ports that you can use for any CAN bus communication aftermarket device. It doesn't necessarily have to be an HP Tuners device. So if you want to add additional things in the future, you have the ability to do that with this harness without having to cut and hack and add into it. So that is, in my opinion, what makes this harness super, super cool. But there's one more thing over here that we got to talk about, and that is the new HP Tuners Core ECU. Now, this is the brains of the whole thing, and when you first get the ECU, you're gonna open up this box, pretty baller, obviously. It's a QR code you're gonna scan. It's gonna help you with initial setup. But the ECU itself, when you pick it up, you can tell right away that this ECU, it feels like an OEM ECU. It feels like this, basically, you just took this out from underneath the dash of a brand new vehicle. It's heavy. It's not a plastic ECU that you would find from some other companies. It comes with all of the mounting hardware included, including the little rubber feet. So that's nice to see. The connectors are IPF rated, so it's dust, water, oil resistant. So if you wanted to, you could mount this underneath the hood of the vehicle. But what really counts is what's inside this ECU. So this has been designed with the same sort of thought process that OEMs have when they're designing their ECU. So it all has all the robust features and the fail-safes that you're going to find in a factory ECU. But you have the ability with their harness to have all the additional things that you'd want in an aftermarket harness. So turbo timers, additional sensors, all that's pretty much the sky's the limit. If you want to add it to your engine, this ECU is going to be able to talk to it. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds in an aftermarket package, which makes it super easy to hook up and make your engine run. I'm going to put this back in here so it's nice and safe. And then I'm going to plug in some harness wires. 3 other connectors that I want to talk about on the HP Tuner harness is, number 1, this input-output connector right here. So it comes with this little cover on it, and if we take that off, there's a couple of options here. Number 1, there is just a input-output harness that you can hook up into this, and that's going to allow you to monitor or control pretty much anything outside of your standard harness features. So you basically plug this in and you have virtually unlimited input and outputs that come out of this harness. But if you're not using that, maybe your project has an electronically controlled transmission like a 4L60 or a 4L80. Using the same connector, you're going to plug in what is your transmission harness. Now, this section is for your automatic transmission. This is obviously a large transmission connector and then a speed sensor. But just because you've gone to computer-controlled transmission doesn't mean you have to give up the I/O feature of that connector, because any ports that they didn't need to control the transmission, they left you the bare wires for a few additional items you might want to add. So there's still some additional features available to you, even though you go with electronic controlled transmission. One other one after that is going to be your O2 sensor. This particular harness and all HP Tuner harnesses for the LS engine are going to have the ability to run 2 wideband O2 sensors. And these aren't proprietary sensors. They are just a part store Bosch wideband O2 sensor that simply plugs into this. And because you have 2 on a vehicle like this, where we're going to have essentially dual exhaust, we're going to be able to monitor both banks of the engine inside the ECU. I don't know of any other aftermarket harness that allows us to basically, from the factory, hook up 2 wideband O2s. And then the last one is super cool. I found it buried in the back. This is a barometric pressure sensor. So if we plug into this, then the ECU, along with our wideband O2s, it'll be able to adjust for elevation when we're out. So on a vehicle like this, where maybe we're changing elevation on a daily basis of 500 to 1,000 feet, the computer's going to be able to basically remap the fuel curve for that changing elevation. That's a big deal when you're dealing with off-road vehicles. So it's super cool that all of that is taken care of with just a couple connectors here at this section right here. So now I'm going to disconnect this because we're not using that. And I'm going to plug in my outputs.
1,
To tune the engine, we're gonna hook a laptop up to the Ethernet connector and open up the new HP Tuner software, VCM Live. If you've used VCM Editor or VCM Scanner in the past, the software is gonna look really familiar, but for the core ECU, we're gonna start by uploading one of the pre-made tunes. In this case, a 24XLS with no transmission control. Then you open up the setup wizard, answer a few questions that are specific to your engine. A unique feature of the HP Tuner's core ECU is the ability to tune on the fly, meaning we can data log while driving the vehicle and make real-time changes to the ECU parameters. This eliminates the need to data log, shut down the vehicle, write a new tune, upload it to the ECU, and then road test it again. Just one extra feature of this ECU. So at this point in time, everything is essentially just put on this mock-up engine, because that's all that it is. Now, I'm gonna rip this engine out, go through the entire engine, make sure it's good and fresh, then we'll stab it back in and fire this bad boy up. And it's gonna sound cool. Today on the show, I've got my two-door Jeep Gladiator back in the shop for a couple things. We're making some aesthetic changes to it to make it sell the whole story that it could actually be a two-door Jeep Gladiator. Then we're throwing it up in the air and doing some upgrades underneath to make it perform better off-road. So I built this Jeep not too long ago. It's essentially a 2007 Jeep JKU that I cut in half and turned into a two-door Jeep Gladiator by adding a Gladiator bed on the back. Now, it's definitely turns a lot of heads everywhere you go. People look at it and they're like, I didn't know they made the Gladiator in two doors. Well, because they didn't. But I really want to sort of help sell that story, because now the vehicle's done, got the V8 underneath the hood, there are a few parts and pieces on this truck that are obviously JK pieces. And I think if I upgrade those, I can really sort of sell that story that this is actually a two-door Jeep Gladiator, not a JK with a Gladiator bed. Plus, now that it's got a V8 underneath the hood and a better rear axle, my plan is to take it to Easter Jeep Safari this year. And so I want a better performing suspension. It just has a 4-inch lift short arm kit. It's not really designed for hardcore off-roading. And there is a kit that I've been keeping my eye on for a while, and everyone that runs it really, really likes it. So that's the next upgrade. Will be all new suspension. So first will be cosmetics, and then we'll work on upgrading the suspension. So now that the LS engine is in there and it's running great, like I said, I love this Jeep even more. But the thing that's always kind of bugged me about it is, for most people, they think it's a two-door Gladiator. But for a true Jeep purist, they can spot the fact that it's not really a Gladiator. And a few things sort of stick out to them. The first one being this bumper. This is obviously a JK bumper. I mean, it looks great. It's done a great job on this Jeep. But there is another bumper that I've had my eyes on for a while that I think is going to completely change the look of this Jeep and make it look a lot better. So this coming off. I never have any tools when we start these shows. I should probably have tools. Oops, fog lights. Bloop. Now this is the Next Venture Motorsports frame chop bumper. Now this was originally designed for the Jeep JL, but now people have installed this exact bumper on JLs, JTs, and even JKs, which is really gonna help out to sell the style of this truck to make it look like it's actually a two-door Gladiator. The benefit of this bumper is that it's gonna improve your ability to take the vehicle off-road, because what you're essentially gonna do is you're gonna cut the front frame horn off of the Jeep and then add this bumper structure. That's gonna push the winch back underneath the grill shell up against the AC condenser, and it will just improve your approach angle when you're off-road. So not only is it gonna look a lot better, make this thing look more like a two-door Jeep Gladiator, but it's also gonna perform better when we take it out in the dirt. First step, cut stuff up. Bang, bang, bang.
Now, if we were installing this bumper on a JL, it actually comes with a little guideline bracket. Next Venture Motorsports sends this to you, take all the guesswork out of it. Basically, just slide it over the frame and you decide whether you're gonna do a little bit of a chop or a great big chop. But on a JK, it's kind of, you're on your own. So you gotta take a bunch of measurements. So the first step is to basically cut a bunch of stuff off the frame, which I did. I cut that lower little bar off and just did a quick chop in the front. Put my winch back into the new bumper, and now I'm just deciding how far back I can slide it. So a few things you have to watch out for. There is a sway bar back in here. I think this bumper is actually gonna slide underneath the sway bar. This is one of those things where you just kind of sneak up on it. So I'm gonna start with a 2-inch cut, and then I'll put this back up here and check it. Probably cut one more after that, because I wanna get back as far as I can. And then you simply weld these plates onto the frame, and then this bumper will bolt on. Before we weld the brackets onto the frame, we're gonna use the bumper essentially as a jig. So we bolt the brackets onto the bumper, put the stinger on, jack it all up into place, check all of our clearances, and then we can weld the brackets on. Zappy zap. There we go. The next step will basically be to remove this Next Venture Motorsports skin system off the front, that I can fully weld those plates onto the frame while I have it apart. But now the next thing I want to do is tackle the rear bumper, because the rear bumper on this thing, it never really looked right on the truck. So I'm excited to actually have a Gladiator bumper for the back of my Gladiator. It's back there. Now on the back of this Jeep, I honestly just modified a JK bumper to fit, and that is why the ends actually got cut off, and I basically welded a plate on. And this truck actually spent 2 years in Arizona, so the spray paint that I used on the end of the bumpers did not last, and that's why the bumper is rusting. So I want to ditch this and go to an actual JT bumper. So to match the front, I got this entire package also from Next Venture Motorsports. Now this is a high clearance, lightweight, big upgrade for the back of the JT, because it does a couple of things. Number one, it gives you a little bit more clearance on the back end. You can see there's a little hole cut out here because they're eventually talking about making a basically hidden hitch. So you'd get rid of the hitch on your Jeep, but you don't have to get rid of your hitch. This will mount using the factory hitch. But the biggest upgrade is the side protectors. So the side protectors come with the bumper. They basically bolt onto your bumper skin, but then they have this large heavy duty metal bracket that actually attaches to these wings, and it mounts to the back of the Gladiator frame. So you get the benefit of protecting the bed, the lightweight of the aluminum, and the cool look, which is definitely gonna look better than this kind of rusty old steel bumper on the back. The thing I gotta do is figure out how to make this work, because it's designed just to bolt into the back of the Gladiator. This obviously is not that. So there's gonna be a little bit of fab, but that's okay. I got tools for that. Hammer time. What? Now all I'm gonna do is basically make a bracket that'll go onto the inside of this frame, line up with the 2 holes that are in this bracket right here. Then we just bolt it on right here. Then these frame extensions will just weld onto the side. So we'll measure, cut, then we can go cut something out on the plasma table. That's like one hand away, that much. Okay. Yeah, we gotta tweak this thing up just a bit. But look at that, I got a little step. So with this bumper extension in place, I know that I still have to move this bumper forward and up just a little bit. I get nervous around this painted body section, so I'm just kind of sneaking up on it. That's kind of why I tacked those brackets in place. So I'll cut those tacks, cheat this forward and up just a little bit more. One thing you gotta pay attention to is the bed of the Gladiator is actually egg-shaped. It's not flat, so when I'm cheating this bumper up and down, I'm gonna check to make sure the center of the bed doesn't contact the bumper. The most important thing is this extension right here. Now, not only do I have protection for this corner of the bed, I also have this cool little integrated step that makes it easier to get in and out of the back of the truck. And It is an actual step because this is the bracket, as I showed you before, that would bolt onto the JT frame and then into the bottom of this. I'll have to trim this to fit and basically weld it onto the frame. So I'm not gonna do that until I know this bumper's in the right spot. But right there, that looks a lot better than that sort of chopped up JK bumper that I had in the back. Now this thing actually looks like a Gladiator. The one downfall to this truck looking like a new Gladiator always was the roof. Now, when we did the half cab conversion, this roof was kind of designed to look like a classic Willys pickup truck. That's why it's got the high center, got these big drip rails on it. But a Gladiator or a JL, they don't have that. The roof is very low. The good news is the manufacturer of this roof now offers a kit that I can actually use the factory JK Freedom panels, which will give me two things. Number one, it'll lower the overall roof height, give it a better look. And number two, it'll be a lot easier to make this thing a convertible, just open air. That's the best part about having a Jeep. That'll be a lot easier. So we'll take this off, put the new one on. Modern Jeeps like the JLs, the modern Gladiators, they have a really low profile roof. So now we have that. And then when I want to have it sealed up, I simply flip it forward and I get that modern look. I love it. With my new convertible top installed, there's a greater chance that I'm gonna get some mud or water inside the Jeep, so I wanna take care of the floor. So I have these new WeatherTech HP floor liners. Now, you've seen these before, and you know everything about WeatherTech. You know, it's got this laser design, so it's the perfect fit. It has these high walls, so anything you spill in it, you can basically just take the whole floor liner out and clean it. And then it's got these nibs on the back that keep it from moving around once it's installed inside the Jeep. But did you know that WeatherTech now also makes recovery equipment? So they have a full line of soft shackles and kinetic ropes. If you don't know what a kinetic rope is, it's basically a rope that stretches when you use it to extract a vehicle from a stuck position. This particular rope is a 7/8 inch rope, which means it has a braking strength of 28,000 pounds and a vehicle rating of around 10,000 pounds. So it's perfect for a vehicle like this Jeep. If you ever got it stuck, you just basically follow the rigging instructions that are attached to the soft shackle, hook it up to your recovery vehicle, and you can snatch the vehicle out from a stuck position, and the rope will actually stretch like a bungee cord and then pull you out from being stuck. So this is going in the bed of the truck, and these are going on the floor. Look how easy that was to install. All right, so now all the cosmetic changes are done. Now it's time to get this thing up in the air and deal with the steering and the suspension. Today I've got my two-door Jeep Gladiator back in the shop, and so far we've been focusing on some body modifications and basically cosmetic upgrades to basically make it look more like a actual two-door Gladiator and less like a JK Gladiator combo. But now that it's up in the air, now I want to focus on upgrading the suspension and steering on this vehicle, because ever since I've swapped the V8 underneath the hood, been itching to take this out and do some hardcore wheeling with it. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I deal with some known problem issues with the JK. First one is the steering. Steering on the Jeep JK, it is probably one of the weakest items that always shows its flaws whenever you take it off-road. I have bent many stock tie rods on JKs on the trail, and as a matter of fact, I always carry a complete stock tie rod and drag link in the back of this Jeep whenever I've taken it out. But now I don't have to worry about this, because I'm going to upgrade all of the steering with this complete upgrade for the JK steering, and it starts with their heavy-duty 100% USA 7075 aluminum links, and you get one for the tie rod and one for the drag link. Huge 2.5-ton forgings for both tie rod ends as well as both ends of the drag link. And you can spec to have a clamp sent with your kit for either a stock steering stabilizer or if you're running any type of hydro assist. I had them send me the clamp. I don't have hydro assist on this yet, but I may in the future. So I'll just keep this with the Jeep. And if I ever add a steering ram, I have the clamp that will clamp on to the steering basically when it's all said and done. The best part is it's 100% plug and play. Just unbolt the old stuff, bolt in the new. Take the tires off.
To go along with my upgraded steering, I did say that I wanted to improve this vehicle's ability off-road. And I've been keeping an eye on this particular suspension system for a while. I know a few of my friends have been running it, and I am very impressed with it. This is the RPM steering and suspension, 3-link front, double triangulated 4-link rear long arm upgrade. Now, there's a couple really cool things about this suspension. First of all, it is a true double triangulated 4-link in the rear. So you get a new cross member and all new upper and lower control arms. Now, the one thing that's a downfall to that with a JK is that if you want to run a double triangulated 4-link, you have to get rid of the fuel tank, and often that means putting some type of fuel cell inside your Jeep. But RPM has a solution for that, and they will supply a new fuel tank for your Jeep that basically goes behind the rear axle in a similar location that we used to see in like TJs and CJs. And this will basically accept the factory fuel module and all the lines, and so everything will work like a factory Jeep fuel tank. Up front, it's a 3-link, so that means that we have the panhard bar, 2 lowers and 1 upper. That is probably the best design suspension you can get for maximum articulation in a solid axle vehicle. And probably the coolest thing about it is since RPM is known for their 7075 USA aluminum links, all of the suspension links are all that 7075 aluminum. They look beautiful. They're incredibly strong. The 7075, we like that because it's what's called memory material. So if you do bend it, it actually deflects back. It doesn't stay bent. At the end of each of the 7075 suspension links are Johnny joints. Now, these are a tried and true suspension joint, and they're fully rebuildable. They work great on and off-road. Now, you don't have to remove the body to install the suspension kit, but since it's so easy to get the bed off the back of this 2-door Gladiator, that's what I'm gonna do to start. Take the bed off, and the tires, and the bumper. Everything we've done, basically. It's so big, it won't fit past the axle. Ow, that's my hand. There we go. Gravity always helps. After the fuel tank is removed, the first step is to install the new RPM steering and suspension cross member. Now, the nice thing is they give you very distinct keys to key off the frame. So there's 2 holes in the cross member that line up with 2 holes that look the exact same on the frame on both sides. You simply clamp it up into place. I ground off some of that, basically the paint or powder coat from the factory. And now I'll clamp it to the frame, and then we'll just tack weld it in for now. Then we'll remove the rear axle and strip it of all the brackets. Welder. I love welding. My favorite thing is taking pieces of metal, cutting them up into smaller pieces of metal, and then welding them together to make a bigger piece of metal. I said it was the most annoying sound in the world. So now with the axle out from underneath the Jeep, we basically need to cut all the brackets off that we're not going to use. Now, I am leaving coil springs and shocks on this truck. We're not converting it over to coilovers. So I will have to do something in the future with these shock mounts because this lower bracket goes away. That's where the shock mounts from the factory. But we'll do that later on when we get the suspension all in and we can flex it back and forth because we may actually end up changing these shocks to get a little bit more travel out of it. But essentially, panhard brackets got to go. All the lower mounts have to go. All the upper mounts have to go because now we're doing this true dual triangulated 4-link, and that means all new brackets. So, cut, 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 cut.
Look at that. There it is. So the lower mounts are in, I've just tacked them in, and I'm doing it a little bit differently than instructions because my plan is to try to retain the factory emergency brake in this truck. So I'm gonna have to cut a couple holes in this mount, basically pass the e-brake cable through it. That's why they're just basically tacked in place and why I kept this upper bracket on. Now we're moving on to the uppers, and because it's a double triangulated 4-link, those uppers are gonna land right on top of the center of our differential. So we need to come up with a truss. Now, when I talked to RPM Steering, he said, you know, I can send you a truss, I have a few different kinds, but considering the fact that this is not the stock axle, and most JK people run a bunch of different axles, it's honestly just better to go ahead and build one specifically for this axle, then we can put our upper mounts in. So that means plasma cutter. Yay, plasma table. That's right. As I work through the suspension from the back to the front, there is one other item that I got from Next Venture Motorsports that I need to basically integrate in with this kit, and that is a full JK belly skid system. Now, the Next Venture Motorsports skids, I love them because they're lightweight aluminum, but they're also available with this UHMW, which is kind of like a high-density plastic covering on it. Now, the nice thing about that is aluminum, when you get in the rocks, it tends to what's called gall up. So when a rock hits the aluminum, yeah, the aluminum's light, but it can actually dig into the aluminum, and actually it's not very slippery. But when you put the UHMW over top, this basically slips and slides over the rocks when you're on the trail. JKs from the factory have a lot of low-hanging fruit underneath the frame. There's things like an evap canister and then the stock gas tanks underneath there, and the crossmember dips down. So having a full belly skid plate on any JK will definitely improve its ability off-road. And this kit from Next Venture Motorsports basically covers the Jeep from the oil pan all the way to the back of the gas tank. Now, we're not going to be using all of this because with our suspension system, we have relocated the fuel tank, but we'll be able to use the transmission transfer case skid as well as the engine skid to just clean everything up underneath the truck. So today, we've definitely changed the look of our Jeep, basically selling it as a two-door Gladiator, and now we are in the middle of completely upgrading the suspension underneath. I can't wait to get this thing out on the trail. Today it's our annual road trip episode, and we're gonna hit a couple of hardcore off-road parks here in the state of Tennessee. And because we're doing some serious wheeling, we're actually gonna tow our rigs to the trail. Right now I'm driving my tow rig over to the shop. We're gonna do a little bit of prep on it before we load up the buggies and hit the road. Today we're gonna go to Golden Mountain Park, which used to be a very popular off-road park here in Tennessee. It's closed for a few years, but now it's reopened to the public, so it's good to have that one back. And then we have a special treat. We're gonna head over to East Tennessee, and we're going to be going on a very rare public piece of land that you can go four-wheeling on here on the East Coast. An upgrade for any tow rig or lifted truck, or maybe if you just drive in the mountains a lot, is a brake upgrade like this Power Stop Z36 truck and tow package. Now, this is a complete upgrade for the Nissan Titan. It includes everything that we need. So it's new rotors front and rear that are drilled and slotted to help prevent dust buildup underneath the pads. It's going to come with their pads that are specifically formulated for these rotors, as well as designed for heavy trucks and towing applications, where once they are bedded into the rotor, they improve your braking when you're either going downhill or, as I said before,
towing a heavy load. When you're installing this, you don't have to worry about having to deal with any old parts that may be worn out because the kit comes with everything that we're gonna need to essentially rebuild our sliders. So it comes with all new stainless clips, new boots, and all new caliper pin lube to ensure that we have good functioning sliding calipers, both front and rear. And the best part is it's honestly 100% bolt-on. Before we load the rig onto the trailer, I went ahead and basically gave it one quick once-over, which is something you should do whenever you tend to tow your trailer. So checked all the tires, greased all of the hubs, and then obviously checked all the lights. And you also want to keep an eye on essentially the structure of the trailer. And I've had this trailer for a long, long time. It is towed pretty much into every corner of the country. So I know the frame and everything is good, but I have noticed that my drive-over fenders are starting to get a little bit of surface rust on them, and I don't like that. So I'm going to give them a quick coat of bed liner. Now this is the Herculiner original truck bed liner kit. Now this is a kit that comes with everything you'd need to line the bed of your pickup truck to give it that good textured, strong protective coating. But you don't just have to use it on truck beds. You can pretty much use it on anything you want. I've used it before on floors of off-road rigs or sometimes on the rock rails if I'm looking for a little bit of traction for getting in and out of the rig. And this is a perfect application for a product like this because it's not only going to seal it from the weather, prevent this surface rust from coming back, it'll give it a good universal coating, just give it a long life. And because it has that texture, it also gives us like a no-slip coating, a little bit of traction because we are going to be always climbing up and down on these fenders whenever there is a vehicle on the trailer. And the best part is you can simply roll it on or brush it on with all the stuff that's included in the kit. This kit can be rolled on all kinds of different materials, from wood, metal, rubber, and most plastics. Plus, it won't rust, chip, or crack over time. Now we can start prepping the rest of the truck by laying in the WeatherTech HP floor liners because we know that this is going to be a wet and muddy trip. And the Cargo Tech Pro from WeatherTech keeps all our other accessories organized in the truck bed so everything stays where we need it. Jeep's all loaded up. It is gonna rain, that's okay. I got a roof for that thing. I knew all along that we were gonna get muddy. This time of year, it's hit and miss in Tennessee. Right now, it's gonna start raining a lot. That's okay, I'm gonna tell you. We're gonna hit the road. We're gonna go to Cookeville, Tennessee, to a private off-road park that's been closed for a few years. It's just opening back up now. We've kind of got the ability to get in there early before the public, and this park has a pretty cool history about it. Here comes the rain, baby! Wheeling in the rain! Woo! So we've made it to Cookeville for our annual adventure ride, and this year we're staying in our home state of Tennessee. And I've picked a couple really cool spots that have some neat history to them. So we're gonna start on a piece of private off-road riding that is pretty common in our area, but this place, it's called Golden Mountain Off-Road Park, and there's a lot of cool history from it because it used to be a family-friendly campground, then it became a legit hardcore throwdown wheeling place, and then it closed, just shut the doors, and nobody could ride on it for almost 10 years now. Well, it's reopening to the public when we're able to get in there ahead of everyone else, spend some time in the dirt. Now, since we're gonna be doing throwdown East Coast hardcore wheeling, and it's gonna be wet, I brought the Jeep LJ. So this thing is basically a full tube chassis, basically combination Ultra 4 rock bouncer, looks like a Jeep, but it's got all the Go Fast goodies on it and all the cheater parts. 42-inch sticky tires and a whole bunch of horsepower underneath the hood. This is the type of vehicle you need to throw down where we're headed over the next few days. So we're on the road over to Golden Mountain Park right now, and in the truck with me, my buddy Nate Pickle. Nate's here because he does a lot of work with Power Stop, and we put new Power Stop brakes on this truck before we hit the trail. So tell us about some of the rigs that you have that have Power Stop on them, Nate, because you have a lot of Power Stoppy stuff on your trucks, right?
I do. All my off-road rigs have Power Stop, and then I started putting them on the tow rigs and noticed a gigantic difference in keeping things cool down big hills and whatnot. And then I actually like them in the water too. Anything that's like muddy, watery stuff for the off-road braking ability. It's nice to come out of a puddle and still have the ability to stop because it can push all the extra water and whatnot through those holes.
The holes in the rotor. All right, everybody, every year we do something silly and stupid on our adventure ride. And this year we've decided that since we have a couple Jeeps, technically we have 3 out of the 4 vehicles are Jeeps, we acquired a large box of Jeep ducks. And so what we decided we're gonna do this year is everyone's gonna get 5 ducks at the start of today. If you do something cool, you get to remove, well, we'll decide if it's cool enough, and then you can remove one of your ducks. You can chuck the duck out of your vehicle. And the winner is the person who has the least amount of ducks. As Bill said, what's the rule, Bill?
To get 0 ducks, you need to give 0.
It's time to unload the rigs and hit the trail here at Golden Mountain Park. One reason I love this park is that most of the trails are really close to the parking lot, so it's not a long ride to get to that first obstacle. It has a good mixture of loose hill climbs and technical rock crawling for all types of off-roading, and it always changes when the rocks get wet.
This is legit Tennessee Southern wheeling because it rained yesterday and everything is basically wet, which means it's literally impassable. Where there's traction 2 days ago, there is no traction. So I thought I had it, but I got offline. I could feel my drive shaft getting into a rock, and so I knew it was time just to call it quits and pull the winch line out because we have a whole day here and then we're going wheeling tomorrow. But everyone said I made it farther than they thought I would, so I get to chuck one of my ducks. I now have 4. Duck out. So last time Ken joined us on one of our off-road adventure trips, he brought his YJ. This time he brought his Jeep Comanche, which is super cool. Tell me a little bit about your Jeep Comanche, Ken.
Comanche was originally built by Matt Cutler, and then he tore it down. I got it, rebuilt the whole thing, put it back together. It works great. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of a race car Comanche.
Race Comanche.
Yeah, race Comanche is a good word for it. So a lot of fun, a lot of horsepower, good times.
All right, so we decided since you broke the tail light, you get to chuck a duck.
All right.
So you can pick the duck you want and chuck it.
Look at that. Got rid of one.
Duck chucked.
-1. I'm the winner.
No, I'm already down 1.
Oh.
So this is our 2018 JL. We've done a little Rubicon axle swap underneath it. We have our Horizon radio inside of it that controls all of the electronics and lockers. And this is the first time we've had it out wheeling.
And you've got front camera, rear camera, but you also got those cool turn signal cameras that I'd like.
Yeah, so we have turn signal cameras on each side. We have a front camera on the front and 4 cameras mounted underneath. One to look at the front suspension, rear suspension, and then one looks down directly in front of each front tire so you can see any obstacles that are there.
And then these, when you turn the turn signals on, that automatically leaves your blind spot in the radio, right?
Yep, high definition video right out the side with the turn signals.
Oh, look at that. Oh, so that's front camera.
That's the front camera.
And when you turn the steering wheel, those turn, right? Look at that, I love it. It's so cool. All right, let's go. Look at that, we got some traction now. Ooh, rocks, I love it. So where's this overhead camera? Look at that. Oh, I see the tire moving. I probably should have made you not take your eyes off the road. Whoa, well, let's back that up a little bit. That was my fault, I made him look at the cameras. Isn't it crazy how much more traction you get as a little bit of rain goes away?
Just a little bit. So the ones underneath are a little bit lower definition and they're night vision. So that's why you get this here.
The strobing
and you
in
get that tint to it.
Yeah, but if it was dark, you could see.
You would be able to see just like it was daylight.
That's pretty cool. That is super cool. I need more cameras on my things. So we've been back wheeling here at Golden Mountain Park. Absolutely love this place. This is Deke, the owner, or one of the owners, brought this place back. So, but you didn't bring this place back for the off-road, right? This was not your idea.
No, we actually bought it for the dirt track that's here.
Yeah.
Me and my dad have been dirt racers since about early 2000s. So that's kind of what got us interested in the place.
Like, I know it's from its heydays. What is the vision that you guys have for this place for the future?
Well, we're wanting to kind of get it back to the way it used to be, where they had big events here. You know, from what we've been told, it's really good for the rock bouncers, and you don't have to go miles and miles to get to the good trails to, you know, play around.
Now it's Nate's turn to get behind the wheel of the LJ buggy and hit the next obstacle. He's full send up the trail and gets to chuck a duck since he was the only one that made it up.
Well, it was great because I was able to try a couple of different, just to feel the truck out, because before this, I've never like driven on the road or anything. I don't like get an idea of throttle sensitivity or any of that.
Yep.
So I was able to just kind of feel it out, and then you kind of helped me, guide me in the right way, and made it up.
Duck?
I've never chucked a duck, so, I mean.
Now you get, oh, hacky duck. Love it. All right, one more trail, and then we're gonna hit the road. Now it was Bill's turn to show off his buggy. Traction was a problem on the wet rocks, but once Tim from Stinger jumped out of the passenger seat, it seemed to be smooth sailing. Then Corbin had a chance to hit the same trail in the race car Comanche, and it made it to the top, so it was his turn to chuck a duck. All right, so that's a wrap on day one here at Golden Mountain Park. To give you an idea of how amazing this park is, we literally ran like a tenth of the trails that are in these woods. It's absolutely amazing. So we did a great time today. Lots of chucking the duck, a little bit of winching, but that's expected in the rain. Now we're gonna head over to a super rare thing on the East Coast, and that is a piece of public land that we can go four-wheeling on, and it's just outside a city by the name of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, that has some pretty cool history. Before we hit the trail today, I'm gonna help out my buddies in the Stinger Jeep with a little bit of a cheater device. Now, this is a pedal commander. Now, what a pedal commander is essentially a throttle enhancement device. And I say any modern vehicle that has a drive-by-wire throttle pedal can definitely do with one of these, because what it does is actually pretty simple. It goes in line between the throttle pedal and the factory computer. So you simply unplug the pedal, plug the pedal into the pedal commander, and then plug the pedal commander into the actual pedal itself. And what it does is it changes the output from the throttle pedal that is read by the computer. The nice thing about it doesn't void your warranty because you're not actually changing the tune inside the computer. Now, for a tow rig, or if you're looking for a little extra performance, there's a bunch of different settings on here. It'll actually really wake up the engine because it allows you to get into the power band of the engine a lot quicker. But here is where it's a cheater device when it's an off-road rig. It has what's called eco mode, and what that's designed to do is basically maximize your fuel economy when you're just driving around town. But when you're off-road on the trail, if you put it in eco mode, what it'll do is it'll really flatten out the throttle pedal. Essentially won't give you wide open throttle. So when you're rock crawling, it'll just give you more control over the throttle when you're on the trail. So there's no question that when you wheel in Tennessee in the rain, it's going to be muddy, and that's why we put the WeatherTech floor mats in the tow rig before we left the shop. So that's keeping my carpet good and safe, just like new. I got the directions locked in. I said we were going to Oak Ridge. That's where we stay. So Oak Ridge is about 30 minutes from where we're going to start our sand mine trail. So I got my GPS coordinates plugged into my phone. That'll take us to the start of the trail where we'll unload all the rigs and start wheeling. Probably one of the most important things to focus on before you hit the trail is strapping your rig onto your trailer. Now, before we left for this trip, I got a whole new set of straps. These are the ratchet strap kits from Tie Down. These are a heavy-duty vehicle-specific tie-down kit. It comes with axle loops, 4 new ratchet straps. They are double diamond stitched to make sure they're good and strong. Both ends of the strap have this safety clip S-hook, which is nice because once it clips onto the D-ring or around the axle loops, it's guaranteed that it's not just gonna slip off if it gets loose. When you are done ratcheting, they actually have a little locking mechanism. When you lock them back down in and release that, that ensures the handle isn't gonna move around. That's just one extra feature to keep the strap locked in place. So this one has like a unique sort of like seatbelt style mechanism in it. It retracts the strap, makes it easy to ratchet down. And then once it's tight, then you can ratchet it into place. They work good, they look great, and they just hold the rig on the trailer. So now we'll unstrap the Jeep from the trailer and we'll drive out into the rain. I tossed the straps into the Cargotec Pro box to stay put while we hit the trail. Entering into the sand mine trail is pretty cool because it takes you through a running stream. It gave us an opportunity to test out our new kinetic rope from WeatherTech. Now we're using this to pull a rig through the water in case it gets stuck. The beauty of a kinetic rope is it has stored energy. So when the vehicle gets stuck and the pulling vehicle keeps going, the rope will actually stretch use that energy to then pull the other vehicle free from the obstacle. It eliminates a lot of stress on both vehicles because of that kinetic stretch.
All right, so the trail we're on is Sand Mine Trail, and the history behind this trail is this is the mountain where they mined all the sand to start what was called the TVA, or Tennessee Valley Authority, where they built a whole bunch of hydroelectric dams to create power for the state of Tennessee. But at the same time, this is also where all the sand came from to build the basically concrete 44-acre bunker that was used in the Manhattan Project for enriching uranium. So there's a lot of history in this spot. This is a rare piece of public land that you can go four-wheeling on in Tennessee. This is the gatekeeper. It's honestly the hardest part of the trail. And if you can't make it up that, you really got no business being here. We really aren't gonna make it up this at all. So we probably shouldn't be here, but we're gonna do it anyway. So we're at the top of the gatekeeper. It only took us about, I think 3 hours to get to here, but that's okay. It's wheeling in the rain, right, Bill?
Absolutely.
All right, so Bill is the only one to actually drive through the gatekeeper obstacle. So he gets to chuck a duck, but I think we're just gonna float it down this river here. There we go.
Be gone, little duck.
Goodbye, duck.
Welcome back to our off-road adventure. We are still fighting the gatekeeper obstacle here at Sand Mine Trail in eastern Tennessee. And yes, it is still wet.
So when you wheel in Tennessee in the rain, you have to do what we call embracing the suck, because it just sucks. I mean, it's still kind of fun. I feel there's less chance of breaking apart because everything's slippery, so there's not a lot of jarring to the drivetrain. The trail's completely different. Like when this thing's dry, I just drive that Jeep up here. It's not difficult at all.
Oh! The gatekeeper was pretty mean to the Stinger Jeep. It tore one of the tires right off the bead and forced them to make a tire swap hanging off of a rock on the trail. We moved forward in order to make it to the top of Sand Mine Trail before dark. It's cool how the trail is littered with old reminders of the work that was done in these mountains in the past.
But here's the craziest part. You ready for this?
Yeah, watch this.
Okay, ready? Spin it. Look at it! Exactly! That's pretty resistant.
That's got all the chemicals that we're not allowed to have anymore.
We made it out, even with the horrible weather, and it was time to go back the way we came across the river. It was flowing a little higher, but still passable.
This was a muddy, wet winch fest, but here's the best part. We're all driving our rigs onto the trailer, and that makes this a win. What we're gonna do right now, get dried off, head back to the hotel, figure out who won our Chuck a Duck contest. All right, so that's a wrap on the Build for Off-Road Adventure. We're back in our hotel lobby. We've all had individual showers. Oh, first, we have to chuck one more duck. You get to chuck a duck for driving up an obstacle with only 3 fully inflated tires. So grab a duck and get rid of it. All right, duck's gone. And how did it feel to drive a Jeep with like only 3 tires on it?
That was definitely a new experience. But luckily I was able to limp it up a little bit and had a good crew to help get that tire back on.
That's all that matters. All right, and once again, Ken joined us, this time with the Comanche. And hey, no rolls.
That's right.
And how did the truck work? Everything worked out well?
Truck worked great. Had a small damaged door from my son driving, but
equal amount of damage.
Yes.
Since you had to buy 2 taillights.
I did. They'll be home on Saturday at the house.
Excellent. Nate, first time, well, not first time, but you're used to the sloppy messiness, but now you're in the full throttle Southern shenanigans. How did you enjoy your time here?
It was, like you just said, it was the same. It's very similar to how I'm used to up in the Pacific Northwest, but I did like the change from going to like manual diesels, which is what I like to build, to like a race car. And I definitely feel like I want to build a race car now.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you make bad decisions with your financial choices.
Race cars are fun.
Race cars are too much fun. All right, so there you go. Now the craziest thing about this is now that it's all said and done, we're back here in the hotel. We've tallied up all the duck totals, and we have a 4-way tie for the Chuck a Duck. So, much like the Australian breakdancing team, everyone gets a medal. have no trophies for you, but I have whiskey and pizza. It's like a trophy in itself. All right, we'll see you next time. We're out.